Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first video of the Cave of Treasures series. I'm very excited to have the opportunity to share this information to the public. Um, it's so deep and so mind-blowing. This is the first of 6 total videos that I'll be doing for this series. And as requested from my viewers, all of my videos will provide you with both an audio narration for those who prefer to listen to it instead, and a visual read along as well, and a link to the PDF in the video description for those who prefer to read the material themselves. That way each video suits the needs of each viewer, okay? And I would also like to add that I guess I'm a pretty good reader with a clear tone, if I do say so myself, and there are some Hebrew words, so bear with me as I try and pronounce certain terms to the best of my ability, okay? But what I can promise you is a smooth and fluid narration. So in this particular video, I'll be covering the first 1,000 years of time. And just to note, this particular book doesn't go too in depth with the creation before Genesis, as that is covered extremely in depth in another book. And that's actually a surprise that I'll be covering in a later video. And you know, like I said, it's so deep and it's so complex that I have to first get your minds ready for the things that you're about to learn, because it can get very confusing if I were to just lay it all out at once, okay? But for now, you'll soon find out what went on during the creation of our planet and the different realms. And once again, that's just a brief summary. Um, you'll also discover the creation of Adam, the revolt of Satan, aka the battle in heaven, the making of Eve, the symbolism of Eden, Satan's attack on Adam and Eve, Adam's stay in paradise, Adam's expulsion from paradise, the birth of Seth, the posterity of Seth, the death of Adam, the burial of Adam, the rule of Seth, and the rise of the sons of Seth after his death. And these contents will complete the first book of the Cave of Treasures. So basically, we're going to go all the way back in time to the very beginning, and then we'll work our way up through the timeline together. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you liked it, don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. Here we go. The first 1,000 years, and this is going to start from Adam all the way up to Jared. The creation, the first day. In the beginning, on the first day, which was the holy first day of the week, the chief and firstborn of all the days, God created the heavens and the earth, and the waters and the air, and the fire and the host which are invisible, that is to say, the angels, archangels, thrones, lords, principalities, powers, cherubim, and seraphim, and all the ranks and companies of spiritual beings, and the light, and the night, and the daytime, and the gentle winds and the strong winds, or also known as the storms. All these were created on the first day, and on the first day of the week, the Spirit of holiness, one of the persons of the Trinity, as we know, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, hovered over the waters, and through the hovering thereof over the face of the waters were blessed, so that they might become producers of offspring. And they became hot, and the whole nature of the waters glowed with heat, and the leaven of creation was united to them. As the mother bird maketh warm her young by the embrace of her closely covering wings, and the young birds acquire form through the warmth of the heat which they derive from her, so through the operation of the Spirit of holiness, the Spirit, the Paraclete, the leaven of the breath of life was united to the waters when he hovered over them. The creation of the heavens and the earth has been planned from everlasting in the immutable mind of God. He created 7 substances or natures in silence without voice: heaven, earth, water, air, fire, the angels, and darkness. The earth was plunged in the midst of the waters. Above the waters was air, and above the air was fire. Water is cold and moist, air is hot and moist. Fire is hot and dry, but it had no luminosity until the 4th day, when the luminaries were created. The angels are divided into 9 classes and 3 orders. The upper order contains cherubim, seraphim, and thrones, and these are bearers of God's throne. The middle order contains lords, powers, and rulers. The lower order contains principalities, archangels, and angels. The cherubim are an intellectual motion, the seraphim are a fiery motion, The thrones are a fixed motion. The lords are a motion which governs the motions beneath it and controls the devils. The powers are a motion which gives effects to God's will. The rulers are in motion, which rules spiritual measures and the sun, moon, and stars. The principalities are a motion which rules the elements. The archangels are a swift operative motion which governs every living creature except man. And the angels are a motion which has spiritual knowledge of everything which is in heaven or on the earth. The guardian angel of every man belongs to this last class. The number of each class of angel is equal to the number of all mankind from Adam to the resurrection. The heaven in which the angels live is above the waters, which are above the firmament, and they minister to their God there, being invisible to bodily eyes. The angels are not self-existent beings, they were created. On the other hand, darkness is a self-existent nature or substance. The creation, the second day. And on the second day, God made the lower heaven and called it recti, that is to say, what is soled and fixed, or firmament. This he did that he might make known that the lower heaven doth not possess the nature of the heaven which is above it, and that is different in appearance from that heaven which is above it, for the heaven above it is of fire, and that heaven is Nura, which means light, and this lower heaven is Darpishan, and because it hath the dense nature of water, it hath been called Reki. And on the second day God made a separation between the waters and the waters, that is to say, between the waters which were above Reki and the waters which were below. And the accent of these waters which were above heaven took place on the second day, and they were like unto a dense black cloud of thick darkness. Thus were they raised up there, and they mounted up, and behold, they stand above the Reki in the air, and they do not spread, and they make no motion to any side. The creation, the third day. And on the third day God commanded the waters that were below the firmament to be gathered together in one place, and the dry land to appear. And when the covering of water had been rolled up from the face of the earth showed itself to be in an unsettled and unstable state, that is to say, it was of damp or moist and yielding in nature. And the waters were gathered together into the seas that were under the earth and within it and upon it. And God made in the earth from below corridors and shafts and channels for the passage of the waters, and the winds which came from within the earth ascend by means of these corridors and channels, and also the heat and the cold for the service of the earth. Now, as for the earth, the lower part of it like unto a thick sponge, for it resteth on the waters. And on the third day God commanded the earth, and it brought forth herbs and vegetables, and it conceived in its interior trees, and seeds, and plants, and roots. The creation, the fourth day. And on the fourth day God made the sun and the moon and the stars, and as soon as the heat of the sun was diffused over the surface of the earth became hard and rigid, and lost its flaccidity, because the humidity and the dampness caused by the waters were taken away from it. The Creator made the sphere of the sun of fire and filled it with light, and God gave unto the sphere of the moon and the star bodies of water and air, and filled them with light. And when the dust of the earth became hot, it brought forth all the trees and plants and seeds and roots which had been conceived inside of it on the third day. The creation, the fifth day. And on the fifth day God commanded the waters, and they brought forth all kinds of fish of divers appearances, and creatures which move about, and twist themselves, and wriggle in the waters, and serpents, and leviathan, and beasts of terrible aspects, and feathered fowl of the air and of the waters. And on this same day God made from the earth all the cattle and wild beasts, and all the reptiles which creep upon the earth. The creation, the sixth day. And on the sixth day, which is the eve of the Sabbath, God formed man out of the dust, and Eve from his rib. And on the seventh day, God rested from his labors and called it Sabbath. The creation of Adam. Now the formation of Adam took place in the wise. On the sixth day, which is the eve of the Sabbath, at the first hour of the day, when quietness was reigning over all the ranks of the angels and the hosts of the heaven, God said, Come ye, let us make man in our image, and according to our likeness. Now by this word us, he maketh known concerning the glorious persons of the Trinity. And when the angel heard this utterance, they fell into a state of fear and trembling, and they said to one another, A mighty miracle will be made manifest to us this day, and that is to say, the likeness of God our Maker. And they saw the right hand of God opened out flat and stretched out over the whole world, and all creatures were collected in the palm of his right hand. And they saw that he took from the whole mass of the earth one grain of dust, and from the whole nature of water one drop of water, and from all the air which is above one puff of wind, and from the whole nature of fire a little of its heat and warmth. And the angel saw that when these four feeble or inert materials were placed in the palm of his right hand, that is to say, cold and heat and dryness and moisture, God formed Adam. Now, for what reason did God make Adam out of these four materials, unless it were to show that everything which is in the world should be in subordination to him through them? He took a grain from the earth in order that everything in nature which is formed of earth should be subject unto him, and a drop of water in order that everything which is in the seas and rivers should be his, and a puff of air so that all kinds of creatures which fly in the air might be given unto him, and the heat of fire so that all the beings that are fiery in nature and the celestial hosts might be his helpers. God formed Adam with his holy hands in his own image and likeness, and when the angels saw Adam's glorious appearance, they were greatly moved by the beauty thereof. For they saw the image of his face burning with glorious splendor like the orb of the sun. And the light of his eyes was like the light of the sun, and the image of his body was like unto the sparkling of crystal. And when he rose at full length and stood upright in the center of the earth, he planted his 2 feet on that spot whereon was set up the cross of our Redeemer, for Adam was created in Jerusalem. There he was arrayed in the apparel of sovereignty, and there was the crown of glory set upon his head. There was he made king and priest and prophet. There did God make him to sit upon his honorable throne, and there did God give him dominion over all creatures and things. And all the wild beasts and all the cattle and the feathered fowl were gathered together, and they passed before Adam, and he assigned names to them. And they bowed their heads before him, and everything in nature worshipped him, and submitted themselves unto him. And the angels in the host of heaven heard the voice of God saying unto Adam, Adam, behold, I have made thee king and priest and prophet and lord and head and governor of everything which hath made and created, and they shall be in subjection unto thee, and they shall be thine, and I have given unto thee power over everything which I have created. And when the angels heard this speech, they bowed the knee and worshipped him. The revolt of Satan in the battle in heaven. And when the prince of the lower order of angels saw that what great majesty had been given unto Adam, he was jealous of him from that day, and he did not wish to worship him. And he said unto his host, Ye shall not worship him, and ye shall not praise him with the angels. It is meet that ye should worship me, because I am fire and spirit, and not that I should worship a thing of dust, which hath thou been fashioned of fine dust. And the rebel meditating these things would not render obedience to God, and of his own free will he asserted his independence and separated himself from God. But he was swept away out of heaven and fell. And the fall of himself and of all his company from heaven took place on the 6th day at the 2nd hour of the day. And the apparel of their glorious state was stripped off them, and his name was called Satana because he turned aside from the right way, and Sheda because he was cast out, and Dawa because he lost the apparel of his glory. And behold, from that time until the present day, he and all his hosts have been stripped of their apparel, and they go naked and have horrible faces. And when Satan was cast out from heaven, Adam was raised up so that he might ascend to paradise in a chariot of fire. And the angels went before him, singing praises, and the seraphim ascribed holiness unto him, and the cherubim ascribed blessing. And amid cries of joy and praises, Adam went into paradise. And as soon as Adam entered paradise, he was commanded not to eat of a certain tree. His entrance into heaven took place at the third hour of the eve of Sabbath, otherwise known as Friday morning. The making of Eve. And God cast a sleep upon Adam, and he slept. And God took a rib from the loins on the right side of Adam, and he made Kawa, which means Eve, from it. And when Adam woke up and saw Eve, he rejoiced in her greatly. And Adam and Eve were in paradise and clothed with glory and shining with praise for 3 hours. Now this paradise was situated on high range of hills, and it was 30 spans according to the measurement of the spirit, higher than all the high mountains, and it surrounded the whole earth. The symbolism of Eden. Now Eden is the holy church, and the church is the compassion of God, which he was about to extend to the children of men. For God, according to his foreknowledge, knew what Satan had devised against Adam, and therefore he set Adam beforehand in the bosom of his compassion, even as the blessed David singeth concerning him in the psalm, saying, Lord, thou hast been abiding place for us throughout all generations, that is to say, that hast made us to have our abiding place in thy compassion. And when entreating God on behalf of the redemption of the children of men, David said, Remember thy church which thou didst acquire in olden time. That is to say, remember thy compassion which thou art about to spread over our feeble race. Eden is the holy church, and the paradise which was in it is the land of rest, and the inheritance of life, which God hath prepared for all the holy children of men. And because Adam was priest and king and prophet, God brought him into paradise that he might minister in Eden, the holy church, even as the blessed man Moses testifieth concerning him, saying, quote, that he might serve God by means of priestly ministration with praise, and that he might keep that commandment which had been entrusted by him by the compassion of God. And God made Adam and Eve to dwell in paradise, true in this word, and it is proclaimeth the truth, that tree of life, which was in the midst of the paradise, prefigured the redeeming cross, which is the veritable tree of life, and that it was that was fixed in the middle of the earth. Satan's attack on Adam and Eve. And when Satan saw that Adam and Eve were happy and joyful in paradise, that rebel was smitten sorely with jealousy, and he became filled with wrath. And he went and took up his abode in the serpent, and he raised him up, and made him to fly through the air to the skirts of Mount Eden, whereon was paradise. Now, why did Satan enter the body of the serpent and hide himself therein? Because he knew that his appearance was foul, and that if Eve saw his form, she would betake herself to flight straightway before him. Now, the man who wished to teach the Greek language to a bird, now the bird that can learn the speech of men, is called babaga, which means parrot. First bringeth a large mirror and placeth between himself and the bird. He then beginneth to talk to the bird, and immediately the parrot heareth the voice of the man. It turneth round, and when it seeth its own form reflected in the mirror, it becometh pleased straightway, because it imagineth that a fellow parrot is talking to it. Then it inclineth its ear with pleasure, and listeneth to the words of the man who is talking to it, and it becometh eager to learn and to speak Greek. In this manner with the objective of making Eve believe that it was the serpent that spoke to her, did Satan enter in and dwell in the serpent, and he watched for the opportunity. And when he saw Eve by herself, he called by her name. And when she turned around towards him, she saw her own form reflected in him, and she talked to him, and Satan led her astray with his lying words, because the nature of woman is soft, or quote unquote yielding. And when Eve had heard from his concerning that tree, straightway she ran quickly to it, and she plucked the fruit of disobedience from the tree of transgression of the command, and she ate. Then immediately she found herself stripped naked, and she saw the hatefulness of her shame, and she ran away naked, and hid herself in another tree, and covered her nakedness with the leaves thereof. And she cried out to Adam, and he came to her, and she handed to him some of the fruit of which she had eaten, and he also did eat thereof. And when he had eaten, he also became naked, and he and Eve made girdles for their loins of the leaves of the fig trees, and they were arrayed in these girdles of ignominy for 3 hours. At midday they received their sentence of doom, and God made for them tunics of skin, which was stripped from the trees, that is to say, of the bark of the trees, because the trees that were in paradise had soft barks, and they were softer than the byssus and silk, wherefrom the garments worn by kings were made. And God dressed them in this soft skin, which was thus spread over a body of infirmities. Adam's stay in paradise. At the third hour of the day Adam and Eve ascended into paradise, and for 3 hours they enjoyed the good things thereof. For 3 hours they were in shame and disgrace. And at the ninth hour their expulsion from paradise took place. And as they were going forth sorrowfully, God spake unto Adam, and heartened him, and said unto him, Be not sorrowful, O Adam, for I will restore unto thee thine inheritance. Behold, see how greatly I have loved thee, for though I have cursed the earth for thy sake, yet I have withdrawn thee from the operation of the curse. As for the serpent, I have fettered his legs in his belly, and I have given him the dust of the earth for food, and Eve have I bound under her the yoke of servitude. Inasmuch as thou hast transgressed my commandments, get thee forth, but be not sad. After the fulfillment of the times which I have allotted that you shall be in the exile outside paradise, in the land which is under the curse, behold, I will send my son. And he shall go down from heaven for thy redemption, and he shall sojourn in a virgin, and shall put on a body of flesh, and through him redemption and a return shall be effected for thee. But command thy sons, and order them to embalm thy body after thy death with myrrh, cassia, and scacti. And they shall place thee in this cave, wherein I am making you to dwell this day, until the time when your expulsion shall take place from the regions of paradise to that of paradise to that earth which is outside it. And whosoever shall be left in those days shall take thy body with him, and shall deposit it on the spot which I shall show him in the center of the earth, for in that place shall redemption be effected for thee and for all thy children. And God revealed unto Adam everything which the Son would suffer on behalf of him. Adam's expulsion from paradise. And when Adam and Eve had gone forth from paradise, the door of paradise was shut, and a cherubim bearing a two-edged sword stood by it. And Adam and Eve went down in of spirit over the mountains of paradise, and they found a cave in the top of the mountain, and they entered and hid themselves therein. Now Adam and Eve were virgins, and Adam wished to know Eve his wife. And Adam took from the skirts of the mountain of paradise gold and myrrh and frankincense, and he placed them in the cave. And he blessed the cave and consecrated it, that it might be the house of prayer for himself and his sons. And he called the cave Miragath Gaze, aka the cave of treasures. So Adam and Eve went down from the holy mountain of Eden to the slopes which were below it, and there Adam knew Eve his wife. And Eve conceived and brought forth Cain and Labuda, his sister, with him. And Eve conceived again, and she brought forth Habil, which is known as Abel, and Kelamath, his sister, with him. And when the children grew up, Adam said unto Eve, Let Cain take his wife Kelamath, who was brought forth with Abel, and let Abel take to wife Labuda, who was brought forth with Cain. And Cain said unto Eve his mother, I will take to wife my sister Labuda, and let Abel take to wife his twin sister Kelamath. Now Labuda was beautiful. When Adam heard these words, which were exceedingly displeasing unto him, he said, It will be a transgression of the commandment for thee to take to wife thy sister, who was born with thee. Nevertheless, take ye to yourselves fruits of trees and the young of sheep, and get ye up to the top of this holy mountain. Then go ye into the cave of treasures, and offer ye up your offerings, and make your prayers, and then ye shall consort with your wives. And it came to pass that when Adam, the first priest, and Cain and Abel, his sons, were going up to the top of the mountain, Satan entered into Cain and persuaded him to kill Abel, his brother, because Labuda, and because his offering was rejected and was not accepted before God, whilst the offering of Abel was accepted. Cain's jealousy of his brother Abel was increased. And when they came down to the plain, Cain rose up against his brother Abel, and he killed him with a blow from a stone of flint. Then straightway Cain received the doom of death instead of curses, and he became a fugitive and a wanderer all the days of his life. And God drove him forth into exile in a certain part of the forest of Nod, and Cain took to wife his sister and made the place of his abode there. The birth of Seth. And Adam and Eve mourned for Abel 100 years, and then Adam knew his wife again, and she brought forth Seth, the beautiful, a man mighty and perfect like unto Adam, and he became the father of the mighty men who lived before the flood. The posterity of Seth. And to Seth was born Enos, and Enos begot Canaan, and Canaan begot Mahalaleel, and these are the patriarchs who were born in the days of Adam. The death of Adam. And when Adam had lived 930 years, that is to say, until the 135th year of Mahalaleel, the day of his death drew nigh and came. And Seth, his sons, and Enos, and Canaan, and Mahalaleel gathered themselves together and came to him. And they were blessed by him, and he prayed over them. And he commanded his son Seth, and said unto him, Observe, my son Seth, that which I command thee this day, and do thou on the day of thy death give my command to Enos, and repeat it to him, and let him repeat it to Canaan, and Canaan shall repeat it to Mahalaleel. And let this my command be handed unto all your generations, and when I die, embalm me with myrrh and cassia and stacte, and deposit my body in the cave of treasures. And whosoever shall be left of your generations in that day, when you're going forth from this country which is round about the paradise, shall take place, shall carry my body with him, and shall take it and deposit it in the center of the earth. For in that place shall redemption be effected for me and for all my children. And be thou, O my son Seth, governor of the sons of thy people, and thou shalt rule them purely and holily and in the fear of God. And keep ye your offspring separate from the offspring of Cain, the murderer. And when the report, quote, Adam is dying, was known generally, all his offspring gathered together and came to him, that is to say, Seth, his sons, and Enos, and Canaan, and Mahalaleel, they and their wives, and their sons, and their daughters, and Adam blessed them. And the departure of Adam from this world took place in the 930th year, according to the reckoning from the beginning, on the 14th day of the moon, on the 6th day of the month of Nisan, which is April, at the 9th hour, on the day of the eve of the Sabbath, which is Friday, at the same hour in which the Son of Man delivered up his soul to his Father on the cross, did our father Adam deliver up his soul to him that fashioned him, and he departed from this world. The burial of Adam. And when Adam was dead, his son Seth embalmed him, according as Adam had commanded him, with myrrh and cassia and stocti. Now Adam's dead body was the first body buried in the earth, and grief for him was exceedingly sore. And Seth and his sons mourned for his death 140 days. And they took Adam's body up to the top of the mountain, and buried it in the cave of treasures. And after the families and peoples of the children of Seth had buried Adam, they separated themselves from the children of Cain, the murderer. And Seth took Enos, his firstborn, and Canaan, and Mahalalel, and their wives and children, and led them up into the glorious mountain where Adam was buried. And Cain and all his descendants remained below on the plain where Cain slew Abel. The rule of Seth. And Seth became the governor of the children of his people, and he ruled them in purity and holiness. And because of their purity, they received the name, which is the best of all names, and were called, quote, the sons of God, they and their wives and their sons. Thus they lived in that mountain in all purity and holiness and in the fear of God. And they went up on the skirts of the mountain of paradise, and they became praisers and glorifiers of God in the place of that host of devils who fell from heaven. There they dwelt in peace and happiness. There was nothing about which they needed to feel anxiety. They had nothing to worry or trouble them. And they had nothing to do except to praise and glorify God with the angels, for they heard continually the voices of the angels who were singing praises in paradise, which was situated at no great height above them, in fact, only about 30 spans, according to the measure of the Spirit. They suffered neither toil nor fatigue. They had neither seed time nor harvest, but they fed themselves with the delectable fruits of glorious trees of all kinds, and they enjoyed the sweet scent and perfume of the breezes which were wafted forth to them from paradise. Thus lived those holy men who are indeed holy, and their wives were pure, and their sons were virtuous, and their daughters were chaste and undefiled. In them there was no rebellious thought, no envy, no anger, no enmity. In their wives and daughters there was no impure longing, and neither lasciviousness, nor cursing, nor lying was heard among them. The only oath which they used in swearing was, quote, by the blood of Abel. And they and their wives and their children used to rise up early in the morning and go up to the top of that holy mountain and worship there before God. And they were blessed by the body of Adam their father. And they lifted up their eyes to paradise and praised God, and thus they did all the days of their life. And when Seth had lived 930 years, he became sick unto death. And Enos his son, and Canaan, and Mahalalel, and Jared, and Enoch, and their wives and their sons gathered together and came unto him, and they were blessed by him. And he prayed over them, and commanded them, and made them to take an oath, and said unto them, quote, I will make you to take an oath, and to swear by the holy blood of Abel, that none of you will go down from his holy mountain to the children of Cain, the murderer. For ye know well the enmity which hath existed between us and Cain from the day whereon he slew Abel. And Seth blessed Enos his son, and gave him commands concerning the body of Adam, and he made him ruler over the children of his people. And Seth ruled them in purity and in holiness, and he ministered diligently before the body of Adam. And Seth died when he was 912 years old, on the 27th day of the blessed month of Ab, also known as August, on the 2nd day of the week, Monday, at the 3rd hour, in the 20th year of the life of Enoch. And Enos, Seth's firstborn son, embalmed his body and buried him in the cave of treasures with his father Adam, and they made a mourning for him 40 days. The rule of Enos. And Enos rose up to minister before God in the cave of treasures, and he became the governor of the children of his people, and he kept all the commandments which his father Seth had commanded him, and he urged them to be constant in prayer. And in the days of Enos, in his 820th year, Lamech, the blind man, killed Cain, the murderer, in the forest of Nod. Now this killing took place in the following manner. As Lamech was leaning on the youth, his son Tubal-Cain, and the youth was setting straight his father's arm in the direction in which he saw the quarry, he heard the sound of Cain moving about, backwards and forwards in the forest. Now Cain was unable to stand still in one place and to hold his peace. And Lamech, thinking that it was a wild beast that was making a movement in the forest, raised his arm, and having made ready, drew his bow and shot an arrow towards that spot, and the arrow smote Cain right in between the eyes, and he fell down and died. And Lamech, thinking that he had shot game, spake to the youth, saying, quote, Make haste, and let us see what game we have shot. Quote, and when they went to the spot, and the boy on whom Lamech leaned had looked, he said unto him, quote, O my lord, thou hast killed Cain. And Lamech moved his hands to smite them together, and as he did, so he smote the youth and killed him also. And when Enos had lived 905 years and was sick unto death, all the patriarchs gathered themselves together and came unto him. Canaan, his firstborn son, and Mahalalel, and Jared, and Enoch, and Methuselah, they and their wives and their sons, and they were blessed by him. And he prayed over them and commanded them, and spake unto them, saying, quote, I will make you to swear by the holy blood of Abel, that none of you shall go down from the mountain to the plain, nor into the encampment of the children of Cain, the murderer, and ye shall not mingle yourselves among them. Take ye good heed unto this manner, for ye well know what enmity hath existed between us and them from the day whereon Cain slew Abel. And he blessed Canaan his son, and commanded him concerning the body of Adam, that he should minister before it all the days of his life, and that he should rule over the children of his people in purity and holiness. And Enos died at the age of 950 years on the 3rd day of the month of the first Teshrin, also known as October, on the day of the Sabbath, in the 53rd year of the life of Methuselah. And Canaan his firstborn embalmed him and buried him in the cave of treasures with Adam and Seth his father, and they made a mourning for him 40 days. The rule of Canaan. And Canaan stood up before God to minister in the cave of treasures. He was an honorable and pure man, and he governed the children of his people in the complete fear of God, and he fulfilled all the commandments of Enos his father. And when Canaan had lived 920 years and was sick unto death, all the patriarchs gathered together and came unto him. Mahalalel his son, and Jared, and Enoch, and Methuselah, and Lamech, they and their wives and their children, and were blessed by him. And he prayed over them and commanded them, saying, quote, I will make you swear by the holy blood of Abel, that none of you shall go down from this holy mountain into the camp of the children of Cain, the murderer. For ye all know well what enmity hath existed between us and them since the day whereon he killed Abel. And he blessed his son Mahalalel, and admonished him in concerning the body of Adam, and said unto him, quote, Behold, O my son Mahalalel, minister thou before God in purity and holiness in the cave of treasures. And depart not thou from the presence of the body of Adam all the days of thy life, and be thou the governor of the children of thy people, and rule thou them purely and holily. Quote, Canaan died, being 920 years old, on the 13th day of the month of Hezron, which is June, on the 4th day of the week, Wednesday, at midday, in the 65th year of the life of Lamech, the father of Noah. And Mahalalel his son embalmed him, and buried him in the cave of treasures, and they made him mourning for him 40 days. The role of Mahalalel. And Mahalalel rose up and ministered before God in the place of Canaan his father. He was constant in prayer by day and by night, and he urged earnestly the children of his people to observe holiness and purity, and to pray without ceasing. And when Mahalalel had lived 895 years, and the day of his departure drew nigh, and he was sick unto death, and all the patriarchs gathered together and came unto him, Jared his firstborn, and Enoch, and Methuselah, and Lamech, and Noah, they and their wives and their children, and were blessed by him. And he prayed over them and commanded them, saying, quote, I will make you to swear by the holy blood of Abel that not one of you shall go down from this holy mountain. And ye shall not permit any one of your descendants to go down to the plain, to the children of Cain the murderer, for ye all well know what enmity hath existed between us and them from the day whereon he slew Abel. And he blessed Jared his firstborn, and he commanded him concerning the body of Adam, and revealed unto him the place whereto he should make ready to go. And he also commanded him and made him to swear an oath, saying, quote, Thou shalt not depart from the body of our father Adam all the days of thy life, and thou shalt be the governor of the children of thy people, and shalt rule them in chastity and holiness. And Mahalalel died, being 895 years old, on the second day of the month Nisan, which is April, on the first day of the week, Sunday, at the third hour of the day, in the 34th year of the life of Noah. And Jared his firstborn embalmed him, and buried him in the cave of treasures, and the people made a mourning for him 40 days. The rule of Jared. And Jared his son rose up and ministered before God in the cave of treasures. He was a perfect man, and was complete in all the virtues. And he was constant in prayer day and by night. And because of the excellence of his life and conversation, his days were longer than those of all the children of his people. And in the days of Jared, in the 500th year of his life, the children of Seth broke the oaths which their fathers had made them to swear. And they began to go down from that holy mountain to the encampment of iniquity of the children of Cain, the murderer. And in this way the fall of the children of Seth took place. At this time, Satan and 30 of his devils appeared to Jared in the form of handsome men, and called him from the cave of treasures. He came out to them, and thought that they were strangers, and asked them who they were. In answer, Satan told him that he was Adam, and that among his companions were Abel, Seth, Enos, Canaan, and other kinsmen of Jared. He invited Jared to come with him and live with him in the garden which God had given him. And at length Jared was persuaded to leave the cave and go with him. When they arrived at the top of the mountain of the sons of Cain, Satan pretended that he had left a garment for Jared by the cave, and sent one of the devils back to fetch it, telling him at the same time to extinguish the lamp which was burning in the cave near Adam's body. Satan and Jared rested by a fountain, and food was brought out to them by the sons and daughters of Cain, but Jared refused to eat or drink. Satan entreated him to put aside his sadness, and to do as he was going to do. Thereupon Satan and 5 of his devils each seized a woman and committed fornication with her. And on seeing this exhibition of iniquity, Jared bursted into tears, and he began to pray to God to be delivered from that place. When he began to pray, the devils took to flight, and God sent an angel who brought him back to his holy mountain. When he returned to the cave, his people told him that the lamp had been extinguished, and that the bodies of the patriarchs had been scattered about, and that voices had come from them. On entering the cave, a voice came to him from Adam's body, and warned him to beware of Satan and his wiles, and told him to relight the lamp from the fire on the altar at which Adam had ministered. The lamp was relighted at the end of the 450th year of Jared's life. 80 years later, his people began to go down to the children of Cain and to mingle with their women. And in the 40th year of Jared, the first 1,000 years from Adam to Jared came to an end. So there you go, guys. That is the very first book of the Cave of Treasures. Please click on the link to go to the second book. It gets deeper, it gets a lot more interesting, but even in this first book, I'm sure you've already been, given so much information, and I know it's a lot to take in. And I told you it was going to be deep, but just know that it's going to get a lot deeper and a lot more interesting. So please stay tuned. Thank you for watching. Treasures, the Second Thousand Years, Book 2. This is Jared all the way to the flood. Jubal and Tubal-Cain, the two brethren, the sons of Lamech, the blind man who killed Cain, invented and made all kinds of instruments of music. Jubal made reed instruments, and harps, and flutes, and whistles, and the devils went and dwelt inside them. When men blew into these pipes, the devils sang inside them, and sent out sounds from inside them. Tubal-Cain made cymbals, and sistra, and tambourines, or drums, and lasciviousness and fornication increased among the children of Cain, and they had nothing to occupy them except fornication. Now they had no obligation to pay tribute, and they had neither prince nor governor, and eating and drinking, and lasciviousness, and drunkenness, and dancing, and singing to instruments of music, and the wanton sportings of the devil, and the laughter which affordeth pleasure to the devils, and the sounds of the furious lust of men neighing after women. And Satan, finding his opportunity in this work of error, rejoiced greatly, because thereby he could compel the sons of Seth to come down from that holy mountain. There they had been made to occupy the place of that army of angels that fell with Satan. There they were beloved by God. There they were held in honor by the angels, and were called, quote, sons of God. Even as the blessed David saith in the psalm, quote, I have said, ye are gods, and all of you sons of the Most High, close quote. Meanwhile, fornication reigned among the daughters of Cain, and without shame several women would run after one man, and one man would attack another, and they committed fornication in the presence of each other shamelessly. For all the devils were gathered together in that camp of Cain, and unclean spirits entered into the women and took possession of them. The old women were more lascivious than the maidens. Fathers and sons defiled themselves with their mothers and sisters. Sons respected not even their own fathers, and fathers made no distinction between their sons and other men. And Satan had been made ruler or prince of that camp. And when the men and women were stirred up to lascivious frenzy by the devilish playing of the reeds which emitted musical sounds, and by the harps which the men played through the operation of the power of the devils, and by the sounds of the tambourines and of the sistra which were beaten and rattled through the agency of evil spirits, the sounds of their laughter were heard in the air above them, and ascended to that holy mountain. And when the children of Seth heard the noise and uproar and shouts of laughter in the camp of the children of Cain, about 100 of them who were mighty men of war gathered together, and set their faces to go down to the camp of the children of Cain. When Jared heard their words and knew their intention, he became sorely afflicted, and he sent and called them to him, and said unto them, quote, By the holy blood of Abel, I will have you swear that none of you shall go down from this holy mountain. Remember ye the oaths which our fathers Seth, and Enos, and Canaan, and Mahalalel made you to swear. Close quote. And Enoch also said unto them, quote, Hearken, O ye children of Seth, no man who shall transgress the commandment of Jared, and break the oaths of our fathers, and go down from this mountain, shall never again ascend it. Close quote. But the children of Seth would neither hearken to the commandment of Jared, nor to the words of Enoch, and they dared to transgress the commandment, and those 100 men, who were mighty men of war, went down to the camp of Cain. And when they saw that the daughters of Cain were beautiful in form, and that they were naked and unashamed, the children of Seth became inflamed with the fire of lust. And when the daughters of Cain saw the goodliness of the children of Seth, they gripped them like ravening beasts, and defiled their bodies. And the children of Seth slew their souls by fornication with the daughters of Cain. And when the children of Seth wished to go up again to that holy mountain, after they had come down and fallen, the stones of that holy mountain became fire in their sight. And having defiled their souls with the fire of fornication, God did not permit them to ascend to that holy place. And moreover, very many others made bold and went down after them, and they too fell. Satan appeared in the form of one Gunnan, and taught him to make horns and trumpets, stringed instruments, cymbals, psalteries, lyres, harps, and flutes. Into these Satan himself entered, and made the music which came from them. Gunnan made corn spirit, and established drinking booths in which men assembled and drank and ate fruit. Then Satan taught Ganun to make weapons of war out of iron, and when men were drunk they killed each other with them. Next, Satan taught men how to dye their garments crimson and purple, and they arrayed themselves in gaudy attire, and began to race their horses. Little by little the children of Seth began to wish to join the sons of Cain, and when the devils had shown them a way down the mountain, 100 of them went down to the plain, and were led astray by the women whose hands and feet were stained with bright colors, and whose faces had tattoo marks on them. When the Sethites tried to return to the top of the mountain, the stones turned into coals of fire, and they could not pass over them. Company after company of the children of Seth went down to the plain, and at length only Jared and a few others remained on the mountain. The leaders of those who went down from Ardis on Mount Hermon were Semyaza, the commander-in-chief, Urikabarami, Koboal, Tamil, Ramuel, Danel, Zakilo, Zerakuyal, Asael, Armaros, Batral, Anani, Zakebe, Sansawael, Satarel, Terel, Yomyael, and Azazel. Each of these was over a company of 10. The names of the two of the decarchs of the 200 angels are omitted. These angels took to themselves wives, and taught them to use of spells and enchantments, and the use of plants and trees. The daughters of Cain conceived, and a tradition in the children were so large that they could not be born in the ordinary way, but had to be removed from their mothers by the umbilicus. These children grew up and became giants 3,000 cubits in height, and when they had devoured all the provisions which their neighbors had collected, they began to fight against men and to eat them, and at length they ate the flesh and drank the blood of each other. Concerning these giants, the book of Enoch says, quote, "Now the giants who were produced from the spirits in the flesh shall be called evil spirits on earth, and their habitation shall be on the earth. Evil spirits shall proceed from their bodies, and the spirits of the giants shall consume, and persecute, and lay waste, and fight and work destruction on the earth, and afflict men. They shall neither eat food of any kind, nor suffer thirst, and they shall remain invisible. And these spirits shall attack the children of men and women, for from them have they come forth. The wickedness of these giants became so great that the earth complained to God. At this time, Azazel taught men the art of working in metals and the use of stibium, or eye paint, and the art of dyeing stuffs in bright colors. Amazarach taught enchantments, also known as magic, and the knowledge of herbs. Armoros taught how spells were to be broken. Barakal taught astrology. Kokabel taught the knowledge of signs. Tamel taught astronomy, and Azrajel taught concerning the moon. And when Jared had lived 960 years, and the day of his departure approached, and came nigh, and arrived, all the patriarchs gathered themselves together, and came unto him. Enoch his firstborn, and Methuselah, and Lamech, and Noah, they and their wives and their children, and were blessed by him. And he prayed over them, and said unto them, quote, I will make you to swear by the holy blood of Abel that you will not go down from this holy mountain. For I know that God will not allow you to remain very much longer in this holy country. Inasmuch ye have transgressed the commandment of your fathers, ye shall surely be cast out into that outer country, and ye shall no longer have your habitation on the skirts of the mountain of paradise. And take ye good heed to this. Let him that is among you who shall go forth from the holy country take with him the body of our father Adam, and the offerings of gold, frankincense, and myrrh, that are in the cave of treasures, and let him carry away and deposit the body in the place wherein he shall be commanded by God to set it down. And thou, my son Enoch, depart thou not from before the body of Adam, but minister before God purely and holily all the days of thy life. And Jared died, being 962 years old, on the 13th day of the month Iyar, which is May, on the day of the eve of the Sabbath, Friday, at sunset, in the 366th year of the life of Noah. And Enoch his son embalmed him, and buried him in the cave of treasures, and they had made mourning for him 40 days. And Enoch stood up to minister before God in the cave of treasures. And the children of Seth turned aside from the right path and willed to go down to the children of Cain on the plain. And Enoch and Methuselah and Lamech and Noah mourned over them. And Enoch had ministered before God for 50 years in the 365th year of the life of Noah. And when Enoch knew that God was about to remove him from the earth, he called Methuselah and Lamech and Noah and said unto them, quote, I know that God is wroth with this generation, and that a pitiless judgment hath been decreed for the people thereof. Ye are the chiefs of this generation and the remnant thereof, for no other man shall be born on this mountain who shall be the chief of the children of his people. But take ye good heed to yourselves, and see that ye minister before God in purity and holiness. And when Enoch had given them his commandment in these words, God removed him to the land of life, and to the delectable mansions which are round about paradise, and to that country which is beyond the reach of death. And of all the children of Seth there remained only 3 patriarchs in the mountain of the triumphant ones, Methuselah, Lamech, and Noah, for all the others had betaken themselves to the encampment of the sons of Cain. Then Michael, Gabriel, Suriel, and Uriel looked down from heaven and saw the wickedness which Azazel had done in the world. And they heard the appeal which the souls of the dead were making to heaven, and they reported the matter to the Most High. When God heard their words, he sent the angel Arsayalalar to the son of Lamech, Noah, with the command, quote, Hide thyself. No mention is made of Methuselah, who begot Lamech when he was 187 years old, and who lived 969 years, and Lamech, who lived 777 years, and begot Noah in the 182nd year of his age, was passed over in favor of his son. Noah consolidated his position by marrying the daughter of Enoch. The angel revealed to Noah that a flood was about to cover the earth, and told him how to escape it. Then God commanded Raphael to bind Azazel hand and foot, and to thrust him into a dark hole in the desert of Dudadel, and heap stones and rocks upon him. There he was to remain until the day of judgment, when he would be cast into the fire and consumed. Gabriel was sent to destroy all the children of fornication, and Michael was sent to bind Semyaza and the other decarchs of the children of Seth, and to imprison them under the mountains of the earth for 70 generations, after which time they were to be taken to the abyss of fire and tortured there forever. The rule of Noah. And when Noah saw that sin had increased in his generation, he preserved himself in virginity for 500 years. Then God spake unto him and said unto him, quote, Take unto thee to wife Hykle, the daughter of Namus, or Hykle-Namus, the daughter of Enoch, the brother of Methuselah. And God revealed unto him concerning the flood which he was making ready to produce. And he spake to him and said unto him, quote, 130 years from this moment I will make a flood. The building of the ark. And God said unto Noah, quote, Make for thyself an ark for the saving of the children of the house, and built it in the plain below the mountain, in the encampment of the children of Cain. And ye shall cut down the timber for the same from the trees that are on this mountain, and thus shall be the dimensions thereof. Its length shall be 300 cubits according to thy cubit, its breadth shall be 50 cubits, and its height 30 cubits, and above it shall be finished off 1 cubit. And make 3 stories in it. The lowermost shall be for wild animals and cattle, the middle one shall be for the birds and feathered fowl, and the topmost shall be for thee and the children of thy house. And make it in cisterns for water, and cupboards for food. And make it thyself a striking board of Eshkar, a wood which will not rot, 3 cubits long, and 1.5 cubits in breadth. And there shall be a hammer of the same kind of wood, and with it thou shalt strike the board 3 times in the day, once in the morning, that the workmen may be gathered together for the work of the ark, and once at midday, that they may eat food, and once at sunset, so that they may cease from their labor. And when thou strikest the board, and men hear the sound of the blows, and say unto thee, quote, What is this that thou doest? Thou shalt say unto them, God is going to make a flood of waters. And Noah did as God commanded him. And there were born unto him 3 sons within the space of 100 years, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and they took unto them wives of the daughters of Methuselah. The death of Lamech. And when Lamech had lived 770 years, he died during the lifetime of Methuselah his father, 40 years before the flood, on the 21st day of the month of Elul, which is September, on the first day of the week, Sunday, in the 68th year of the life of Shem, the firstborn of Noah. And Noah his firstborn embalmed him, and Methuselah his father swathed him for burial, and they buried him in the cave of treasures, and mourned for him 40 days. The rule of Methuselah and Noah. And Methuselah and Noah remained alone on the mountain, for all the children of Seth had gone down from the skirts of the mountain of paradise to the plain where the children of Cain lived. And men, the children of Seth, had intercourse with the daughters of Cain, who conceived of them, and brought forth men, giants, and the sons of giants, who were like unto towers. Now, because of this, certain ancient writers have fallen into terror, and have written, quote, "The angels came down from heaven and had intercourse with the men, and by them these famous giants have been produced." But this is not true, for those who have written in this matter did not understand the facts. Behold, O my brother readers, and know ye that it is not in the nature of beings of the Spirit to beget, neither is it in the nature of the devils, who are unclean beings and workers of wickedness, and lovers of adultery, to beget, because there are neither males nor females among them. And since the time when the angels fell, nor another angel has been added to their number. The death of Methuselah. And when Methuselah had lived 969 years, and the days of his departure had drawn nigh, Noah and Shem and Ham and Japheth and their wives came unto him. Now of all the posterity of Seth who had not betaken themselves down to the plain, only these 8 souls were left: Noah, Shem, Ham, Japheth, and their wives, for no children were born to them before the flood. And when these gathered themselves together to Methuselah, and they had been blessed by him, he embraced them, and kissed them sorrowfully, and wept over the fall of the children of Seth. And he said unto them, quote, "Of all the tribes and families of your fathers, this remnant consisting of 8 souls alone is left. May the Lord God of our fathers bless you. The Lord God who formed our father Adam and Eve by themselves, and they were fruitful and multiplied, and the whole of the blessed land which was round about paradise was filled with their progeny, shall make you to be fruitful and to multiply, and the whole earth shall be filled with you. He shall save you from the terrible wrath which hath been decreed against this rebellious generation, and he shall be with you, and he shall protect you. And the gift which was given by God unto our father Adam shall go forth with you from this holy country. And these 3 measures of the wheat of blessings, which God gave unto your father Adam, shall serve as leaven, and shall be kneaded into your seed, and into the seed of your children, that is to say, royalty, priesthood, and prophecy. Hearken thou, Noah, thou blessed of the Lord. Behold, I am going forth from this world, like all my fathers, but thou and thy children shall be saved. And thou shalt do everything which I am commanding you to do to this day, for God will make the flood. When I die, embalm my body, and bury me in the cave of treasures with my fathers. Take thy wife and thy sons, and the wives of thy sons, and get thee down from this holy mountain. And take with thee the body of our father Adam, and these 3 offerings, gold and myrrh and frankincense. Set the body of the Adam in the middle of the ark, and lay these offerings upon him. Thou and thy sons shall occupy the eastern part of the ark, and thy wife and thy sons' wives shall occupy the western part thereof. Thy wives shall not pass over to you, and ye shall not pass over to them. Ye shall neither eat nor drink with them, and ye shall have no intercourse whatsoever with them, until ye go forth from the ark. Now this generation hath provoked God to wrath, and he will neither permit them to be neighbors of those who are in paradise, nor to praise him with the angels. And when the waters of the flood have subsided from the face of the earth, And ye go forth from the ark, and ye take up your abode in that land. Thou, O Noah, the blessed of the Lord, shall not depart from the ark, from the body of our father Adam, but minister thou before God in the ark purely and holily all the days of thy life. And these offerings shall be placed in the east. And command thou Shem, thy firstborn, to take up with him, after thy death, the body of our father Adam, and to carry it and deposit it in the middle of the earth. And let him establish there a man from among his descendants, who shall minister there, and he shall be one who is set apart all the days of his life. He shall not take a wife, he shall not shed blood, he shall not offer up these offerings of wild animals and feathered fowl, but he shall offer up unto God bread and wine, for by these redemption shall be made for Adam and all his posterity. And the angel of God shall go before him, and he shall show him the place where the middle of the earth is situated, and the apparel of him that shall stand up there to minister before the body of Adam shall be the skins of wild animals. He shall not shave off the hair of his heads, and he shall not cut his nails, but he shall remain alone, because he is the priest of God, the Most High. And when Methuselah had commanded Noah to do all these things, he died with tears in his eyes and sorrow in his heart. He was 969 years old when he died, on the 14th day of the month Adar, which is March, on the first day of the week, Sunday, in the 79th year of the life of Shem, the son of Noah. And Noah his grandson embalmed the body of Methuselah with myrrh and cassia and skakti. And Noah and his sons buried him in the cave of treasures, and they and their wives made mourning for him 40 days. And when the days of his mourning had passed, Noah went into the cave of treasures, and embraced and kissed the holy bodies of Seth, and Enos, and Canaan, and Mahalalel, and Jared, and Methuselah, and Lamech his father. And he was greatly moved, and tears gushed from his eyes. And Noah carried the body of our father Adam, and the body of Eve, and his firstborn Shem carried the gold, and Ham carried the myrrh, and Japheth the frankincense, and they went forth from the cave of treasures. And as they were coming down from that holy mountain, they were smitten sorely with grief, and they wept in agony, because they were to be deprived of that holy place, and the habitation of their fathers, and weeping painfully, and wailing sorrowfully, and enveloped in gloom, they said, Remain in peace, O holy paradise, thou habitation of our father Adam. He went forth from thee alive, but stripped of glory and naked, and behold, at his death he was deprived of thy nearness. He and his progeny were cast out into exile in the land of curses, to pass their days there in pain, in sickness, and in labor, and in weariness, and in trouble. Remain in peace, O cave of treasures. Remain in peace, O habitation and inheritance of our fathers. Remain ye in peace, O fathers and patriarchs. Pray ye for us, O ye who live in the dust, ye friends and beloved ones of the living God. Pray ye for the remnant of your posterity which is left. O ye who have propitiated God, make supplication unto him on our behalf in your prayers. Remain in peace, O Enos. Remain ye in peace, O ye ministers of God. Canaan and Mahalalel and Jared and Methuselah and Lamech and Enoch, cry out in sorrow on our behalf. Remain in peace, O haven and asylum of the angels. O ye our fathers, cry out in sorrow on our behalf, because you will be deprived of our society. And we will cry out in sorrow, because we are cast out into a bare land, for our habitation will be with the wild beast. And as they were coming down from that holy mountain, they kissed the stones thereof, and embraced the delectable trees thereof. And in this wise they came down, and they wept with great sorrow, and shed scalding tears, and suffering sorely they descended to the plain. And Noah went into the ark, and deposited the body of Adam in the middle thereof, and he placed these offerings upon it. Now in the year wherein Noah went into the ark, the 2,000 years of the posterity of Adam, to the time of the flood, came to an end. The third 1,000 years from the flood to the reign of Ru. Noah's entry into the ark. The entrance of Noah into the ark took place on the day of the eve of Sabbath, which is Friday, on the 17th day of the blessed month of Iyar, which is May. On the Friday, in the morning, the third hour, the beasts and the cattle went into the lowermost story, and at midday all the feathered fowl and all the reptiles went into the middle story. And at sunset Noah and his sons went into the ark on the east side of the third story, and his wife and the wives of his sons went to the west side. And the body of Adam was deposited in the middle of the ark, wherein also all the mysteries of the church were deposited. Thus women in church shall be on the west side, and men on the east side, so that the men may not see the faces of the women, and the women may not see the faces of the men. Thus also was it in the ark. The women were on the west side, and the men on the east side, and the body of our Father. Adam was placed between them like a raised stand or throne. And as quietness reigneth in the church between men and women, so also peace reigned in the ark between the wild beast and the feathered fowl and the creeping things or reptiles. And as kings and judges and rich men and poor men and governors and sick men and beggars live in concord, that is to say, in a general bond of peace, so also was it in the ark. For lions and panthers and savage beasts of prey lived in peace and harmony with the cattle, and the beasts that were fierce and strong lived in peace with those that were timid and weak, and the lion with the ox, and the wolf with the lamb, and the lion's whelp with the calf, and the serpent with the dove, and the hawk with the sparrow. The flood. And when Noah and his sons had gone into the ark, and his wife and the wives of his sons, on the 17th day of the month of Iyar, which is May, at sunset the door of the ark was shut fast, and Noah and his sons in captivity in the darkness. And as soon as the door of the ark was shut, the floodgates of the heavens were opened, and the foundations of the earth were rent asunder, and ocean, that great sea which surroundeth the whole world, poured forth its floods. And whilst the floodgates of heaven were open, and the foundation of the earth were rent asunder, the storehouses of the winds burst their bolts, and storm and whirlwind swept forth, and ocean roared, and hurled its floods upon the earth. And the children of Seth, who had bemished themselves in the mire of fornication, ran to the door of the ark, and entreated Noah to open to them the door of the ark. And when they saw the water floods which were swirling about them and engulfing them on all sides, they were in great tribulation, and they tried to climb up the mountains of paradise, but were unable to do so. Now the ark was closed and sealed, and the angel of the Lord stood over one side of it, that he might act as the pilot thereof. And when the floods of waters mastered the children of Seth, and they began to drown in their great and mighty waves, then was fulfilled that which David spake concerning them, saying, I said, Ye are gods, and all of you sons of the Most High. But since ye have done this, and ye have loved the fornication of the daughters of Cain, like them ye shall surely perish. And even as they did, so shall ye die. And when the ark was lifted up from the earth by the mighty strength of the waters, all the children of men, and the wild beasts, and the feathered fowl, and the cattle, and the creeping things, and everything living on the face of the earth was drowned. And the waters of the flood mounted above all the tops of the high mountains 15 cubits, which variance, or 25 to 50 cubits, according to the measure of the Spirit. And the flood waxed strong, and the waters thereof lifted up the ark until it reached the skirts of the mountain of paradise. And as the flood had been blessed by paradise, it bowed its head and kissed the skirts of paradise, and turned itself back to destroy the whole earth. And the ark flew on the wings of the wind over the waters of the flood from east to west, and from north to south, and it marked out by its path a cross on the waters. And the ark flew about 150 days, and it came to rest on the mountains of Cardo in the 7th month, that is to say, in the first Teri, which is October, on the 17th day thereof. And God commanded the waters, and they became separated from each other. The celestial waters were taken up and ascended to their own place above the heavens, whence they came. The waters which had risen up from the earth returned to the lowermost abyss under the earth, and those which belonged to the ocean, which surrounded the whole world, returned to the innermost parts thereof. And the waters which had been on the earth, and had been assigned to it by the divine nod for the needs thereof from the beginning, remained upon it. And the waters diminished little by little until the 10th month, which is Shabbat, February, and on the first day thereof the tops of the mountains appeared. And 40 days later, on the 10th day of the month of Adar, which is March, Noah opened the east window of the ark, and sent forth a raven to bring back tidings. And the raven departed and did not return. And after the waters had diminished a little more from the earth, Noah sent forth a dove, and it found no place to rest. And it returned to Noah to the ark, and after 7 days he sent forth another dove, and it returned to him, carrying its beak and olive leaf. Now the dove figureth for us the two covenants. In the first covenant, the spirit which spake by the prophets did not find a place of rest among the rebellious people, and in the second covenant it rested on the peoples through the waters of baptism. Noah leaves the ark. And in the 601st year of the life of Noah, on the first day of the month of Nisan, which is April, the waters had dried up from the face of the earth. And in the second month, which is Ayar, which is May, wherein Noah went into the ark on the 27th day, on the holy first day of the week, Sunday, their going forth took place, and he and his wife went forth, and his sons and their wives went with him. Now when they went into the ark, they went in separate companies, Noah and his sons in one company, and his wife and their wives in another company. And the men did not know the women until they went forth from the ark. And all the wild beasts, and all the cattle, and all the feathered fowl, and all the creeping things went forth from the ark on the first day of the week. Noah finds Themanin, which is known as the city of the eight. And when they had gone forth, Noah began work on the ground, and they built a city, and called the name thereof Themanin, which means eight, after the name of the 8 souls who had gone forth from the ark. And Noah built an altar, and offered up upon it an offering of beasts that were clean and feathered fowl. And God was appeased by the offering of Noah, and he established with him an everlasting covenant, and swore an oath, saying, I will never again make a flood. He took away the arrow of wrath from the bow which is in the clouds, and he stripped from it the string of anger, and spread it out in the clouds. For formerly, when the bow was bent in the firmament against that generation of the children of Cain, the murderer, they used to see the arrow of wrath placed in position on the string of anger, but after the flood they did not see the arrow on the string. The vineyard of Noah. And when they had gone forth from the ark, they sowed seed and planted a vineyard, and they pressed out new wine. And Noah drew nigh, and drank some of it, and immediately he had drunk of it, he became drunk. And having fallen asleep, his shame was seen. And his son Ham saw the nakedness of his father, and did not cover it, but he laughed at him, and made a mock of him. And he ran and called his brethren, that they also might make a mock of their father. And when Shem and Japheth heard of it, they were dismayed exceedingly. And they rose up, and took a cloak, and walked backwards, with their faces turned away, that they might not see the nakedness of their father. And they cast the cloak over him, and covered him. And when Noah woke up from the sleep of his wine, his wife told him about everything that had happened, and he also within himself knew what had happened to him. And Noah was exceedingly angry with his son Ham, and he said, Cursed be Canaan, he shall be a servant of servants to his brethren. Why, since the whole of the folly was Ham's, was Canaan cursed, except that when the youth grew up and attained the full measure of his understanding, Satan entered into him, and became to him a teacher of sin? And he renewed the work of the house of Cain, the murderer. He constructed and made reed instruments and harps, and the fiends and the devils went unto them, and dwelt therein. And immediately wind was blown through them, the reeds. The devils sang inside them, and sent forth loud sounds. And when men struck the harps, the devils became operative inside them. And when Noah heard that Canaan had done this, he was grieved sorely, because the work of error through which the fall of the children of Seth had taken place was renewed. For by means of singing and lewd play and the mad lasciviousness of the children of Cain, Satan had casted down the mighty men, the sons of God, into fornication. And through the music of reed pipes and harps sin had multiplied among the former generations, until at length God became wroth and made the flood. And Canaan was cursed because he had dared to do this, and his seed became a servant of servants, that is to say, to the Egyptians, and the Cushites, and the Mysians, and the Indians, and all the Ethiopians whose skin were black. And because Ham had dared to make a mock of his father, he was called vile or lascivious all the days of his life. Now Noah in his lying down in sleep, having drunk wine, symbolizeth the cross of Christ, as the blessed man David singeth in his psalm concerning him, saying, Wake up, Lord, like a sleeping man, and like a man whom wine hath overcome. He did not say God, but Lord, thus making known concerneth the unity or oneness of the two persons who are united in one sonship. Now when Noah woke up from his sleep, he cursed Canaan and reduced his seed to slavery and scattered his seed among the nations. And when our Lord rose from the dead, he cursed the Jews and scattered them among the nations. Now the seed of Canaan, as I have already said, are the Egyptians, and behold, they are scattered over the whole earth, and have been made servants of servants. And of what kind is this slavery of slavery? Behold, the Egyptians go round about all over the earth carrying loads on their backs, literally necks. Now, men who are not fettered under the yoke of slavery, when dispatched by their masters on journeys, do not march on their feet and carry loads, but they ride upon beasts in honorable manner like their masters. The seed of Ham are the Egyptians who carry loads, and they march on the roads with their backs and necks breaking under their loads, and they wander round to the doors of the children of their brethren. The seed of Ham was reduced through the folly of Canaan to suffer this penalty, that is, to become servants even to servants. The death of Noah. And Noah lived 350 years after he came forth from the ark. And when he was sick unto death, Shem and Ham and Japheth and Arpachshad and Shelah gathered together unto him. And Noah called Shem his firstborn, and said unto him privily, Take heed, my son Shem, unto what I say unto thee this day. When I am dead, go into the ark wherein thou hast been saved, and bring out the body of our father Adam, and let no man have knowledge of what thou doest. And take with thee from this place provision for the way, bread and wine, and take with thee Melchizedek the son of Malach, because him hath God chosen from among all your descendants, that he may minister before him in respect of the body of our father Adam. And take the body and place it in the center of the earth, and make Melchizedek to sit down there. And the angel of God shall go before you, and shall show you the way wherein ye shall go, and also the place wherein the body of Adam shall be deposited, which is indeed the center of the earth. There the four quarters of the earth embrace each other. For when God made the earth his power, he went before it, and the earth from its four quarters ran after it, like the winds and the swift breezes. And there, in the center of the earth, his power stood still and was motionless. There shall redemption be made for Adam and for all his posterity. Now this story or mystery was handed down to us from Adam in all generations. Adam commanded Seth, and Seth commanded Enos, and Enos commanded Canaan, and Canaan commanded Mahalalel, and Mahalalel commanded Yared, and Yared commanded Enoch, and Enoch commanded Methuselah, and Methuselah commanded Lamech. And behold, I command thee this day, and take heed that this story is never mentioned again in all your generations. Get thee up, and take the body of Adam, and deposit it secretly in the place which God shall show thee, until the day of redemption. And when Noah had given all these commands unto his son Shem, he died.
being 950 years old in the month of Iyar, which is May, on the second day thereof, at the second hour of the first day of the week, Sunday. And Shem his son embalmed him, and buried him in the city which he had built, Themanin, and they made a mourning for him 40 days. The departure of Shem with the body of Adam. And after the death of Noah, Shem did as his father had commanded him, and he went into the ark by night, and brought out the body of Adam therefrom, and he sealed the ark with his father's seal, and no man perceived what he had done. And he called Ham and Japheth, and said unto them, My brethren, my father commanded me to go up and travel over the earth, even to the sea, or to the Mediterranean, and I am to see what the rivers are like, and then return unto you. And behold, my wife and the children of my house are with you in care. Let your eyes be upon them. And his brethren said unto him, Take with thee a company of men from the camp, for the land is a desert waste, and is shorn of inhabitants, and there are wild beasts therein. And Shem said unto them, The angel of the Lord shall go up with me, and he shall save me from every evil thing. And his brethren said unto him, Go in peace, and may the Lord God of our fathers be with thee. And Shem said unto Malach, the brother of Shelah, the son of Canaan, and grandson of Arphaxad, the father of Melchizedek, and Yelzadek his mother, Give ye me Melchizedek, that he may go up with me, and be a consolation for me on the road. And Malach and Yelzadek his mother said unto Shem, Take him, and go in peace. And Shem gave commands unto his brethren, and said unto them, My brethren, my father made me swear that neither I nor any of your descendants should go into the ark. And he sealed the ark with his seal, and said unto them, Let no man go near it. Shem carries the body of Adam to Golgotha. And Shem took the body of Adam and Melchizedek, and went forth by night from among his people. And behold, the angel of the Lord, who was going before them, appeared unto them. And their journey was very speedy, and because the angel of the Lord strengthened them until they arrived at that place. And when they arrived at Golgotha, which is the center of the earth, the angel of the Lord showed Shem the place for the body of Adam. And when Shem had deposited the body of our father Adam upon that place, the four quarters of the earth separated themselves from each other, and the earth opened itself in the form of a cross, and Shem and Melchizedek deposited the body of Adam there in the captivity. And as soon as they had laid it therein, the four quarters of the earth drew quickly together, and enclosed the body of our father Adam, and the door of the created world was shut fast. And that place was called Karkuptha, which means skull, because the head of all the children of men was deposited there. And it was called Golgotha, because it was round like the head, and Rasiftha, which means trodden down thing, because the head of the accursed serpent, that is to say, Satan, was crushed there. And the Gagipha, or Gabatha, because all the nations were to be gathered together to it. Shem's commands to Melchizedek. And Shem said unto Melchizedek, Thou shalt be the priest of the Most High God, because thou alone hath God chosen to minister before him in this place. And thou shalt sit here continually, and shalt not depart from this place all the days of thy life. Thou shalt not take a wife, thou shalt not shave thy head, and thou shalt not pour out blood in this place. Thou shalt not offer up wild beasts nor feathered fowl, but thou shalt offer up bread and wine always. And thou shalt not build a building in this place. And behold, the angel of the Lord shall come down to thee and visit thee continually. And Shem embraced and kissed Melchizedek and blessed him, and he returned to his brethren. And Malach, the father of Melchizedek, and Yelzadek his mother said unto Shem, Where is the young man? And he said, He died on the journey, and I buried him there. And they mourned for him greatly. The generations of Shem. And when Shem had lived 600 years, he died, and Arpachshad his son, and Salah, and Eber his sons buried him. And Arpachshad was 30 and 5 years old when he begot Shelah, and all the days of his life were 438 years, and he died. And Shelah his son, and Abar, and Peleg buried him in Aparksharoth, the city which he built after his own name. Shelah was 30 years old when he begat Eber, and all the days of his life were 433 years, or in Ethiopic variant 408 years, and he died. And Eber his son, and Peleg, and Ru buried Hil in Shelihon, the city which he built after his own name. Eber was 30 and 4 years old when he begat Peleg, and all the days of his life were 464. In the Ethiopic variant, that's 434 years, and he died. And Peleg his son, and Ru, and Sarug buried him in Abrin, the city which he built after his own name. Peleg was 30 years old when he begot Ru, and all the days of his life were 239 years, and he died. And they buried him in the city of Peleg, which he also had built after his own name. The migration to the land of Centaur. And in the days of Peleg, all the tribes and families of the children of Noah gathered together and went up from the east. And they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they all sat down there. And from Adam until this time they were all of one speech and one language. And in the days of Peleg, the tower which is in Babel was built, and there the tongues of men were confounded. And from that place they were scattered over the face of all the earth, and that place was called Babel, because tongues were confounded there. And after the division of tongues, Peleg died in great sorrow, and with tears in his eyes, and grief in his heart, because in his days the earth was divided. And his son Ru, and Sarug, and Nahor buried him in Pelegan, the city which he had built after his own name. And there were 72 tongues in the earth, and 72 heads of tribes or families, and each tribe and tongue made unto themselves a chief like king. The posterity of Japheth. And the seed of Japheth became 37 nations and kingdoms, Gomer or Gomer, and Yavon, and Madai, and Tubal, and Mesech, and Tiris, and all the kingdoms of the Elanai. All these are the children of Japheth. And the sons of Nubia, Egypt, and Put, and Canaan, and all their children, and the sons of Shem, the Elamites, and Ashur, which are the Assyrians, and Aparkshar, which are the Persians, and Lod, the Lud, and Aram, which are the Aramaeans, the Damascenes, and the Haranites, and all their children. Now the children of Japheth clung to the borders of the east, from the mountain of Nod, which is on the confines of the east, to the Tigris and the confines of the north, and from Botoranos, which is Bactria, as far as Gadrion, which is Gadaria. And the children of Shem held from Persia in the east, as far as the sea in the west. Unto them belongeth the middle of the earth, and they held sovereignty and dominion therein. The children of Shem occupy all the southern and a little of the western quarter. And Ru lived 32 years, and begot Sarug. And in the days of Ru, in his 130th year, Nimrod, the mighty man, the first king on the earth, reigned. And he reigned 69 years, and the beginning of his kingdom was Babel. This Nimrod saw the figure of a crown in the heavens, and he called Seson, the weaver, who wore a crown like unto it. And he set it on his head, and because of this men used to say that the crown came down to him from heaven. And in the days of Ru, the 3,000 years came to an end.
The 4,000 years from the reign of Ru to the 26th year of the life of Ehud. And in the days of Ru, the Mesrai, who are the Egyptians, appointed their first king. His name was Punthos, and he reigned over them 68 years. And in the days of Ru, a king reigned in Sabah, and in Ophir, and in Havilah. And there reigned in Sabah 60 of the daughters of Sabah. And for many years women reigned in the Sabah, until the kingdom of Solomon the son of David.
And the children of Ophir, that is, Scindia, appointed to be their Laphoron, who built Ophir with stones of gold. Now all the stones that are in Ophir are of gold. And the children of Havilah appointed to be their king Havil, who built Havilah, that is, India. And Ru died, being 239 years old, and Serug his son, and Nahor and Terah buried him in Orion, the city which he built after his own name. And Serug lived 30 years and begot Nahor, and all the days of his life were 230 years. And in the days of Serug the worship of idols entered the world, and in his days the children of men began to make themselves graven images, and it was at this time that the introduction of idols into the world took place. For the children of men were scattered all over the earth, and they had neither teachers nor lawgivers, and no one to show them the way of truth, wherein they should walk, and for this reason they became confused and fell into terror. Some of them through their error adored the heavens, and some of them worshipped the sun, and the moons, and the stars, and some of them the earth, and wild beasts, and birds, and creeping things, and trees, and stones, and the creatures of the sea, and the waters, and the winds. Now Satan had blinded their eyes so that they might walk in the darkness of error, because they had no hope of resurrection. For when one of them died, they used to make an image of him and set it upon his grave, so that the remembrance of his appearance might not pass from before their eyes. And when error had been shown broadcasted in all the earth, the land became filled with idols in the form of men and women. And then Serug died, being 230 years old, and Nahor and Terah and Abraham his sons buried him in Sargon, the city which he built after his own name. And Nahor was 29 years old when he begot Terah. And in the days of Nahor, in the 70th year of his life, when God looked upon the children of men and saw that they were worshipping idols, a great earthquake took place, and all their houses were overturned and fell down. But the people did not understand within themselves, and they added to their wickedness. And Nahor died when he was 147 years old, and Terah his son and Abraham buried him. Terah was 75 years old when he begot Abraham. And Terah was 75 years old when he begot Abraham in the days of Terah. In his 90th year sorcery appeared on the earth in the city of Ur, which Horam the son of Abar built. Now there was in the city a certain man who was very rich, and he died at that time. And his son made an image of him in gold, and set it upon his grave, and he appointed there a young man to keep guard over it. And Satan went and took up his abode in that image, and he spake to that youth, the son of the rich man, after the manner of his father. And thieves went into his house and took everything that the youth possessed. And he went out to the tomb of his father weeping. And Satan spake unto him, saying, quote, Weep not in my presence, but go and fetch thy little son, and slay him here as a sacrifice to me. And forthwith everything which thou hast lost shall be returned to me here. And straightway the youth did just as Satan told him, and he slew his son, and bathed in his blood. And Satan went forth immediately from that image of gold, and entered into the youth, and taught him sorcery, and enchantments, and divination, and the lore of the Chaldeans, and how to tell fortunes, and how to forecast events, and how to foretell destinies. And behold, from that time the children of men began to sacrifice their sons to devils and to worship idols, for the devils entered into the images and took up their abodes therein. And in the 100th year of the life of Nahor, when God saw that the children of men were sacrificing their sons to devils and worshipping idols, he opened the storehouses of the wind and the gate of the whirlwind, and a blast of wind went forth in all the earth. And it uprooted the images and the places where offerings were made to devils, and it swept together the idols and the images and the pillared buildings in a heap, and piled up great mounds of earth over them, and they are there to this day. Now to this blast of wind learned men have given the name of wind flood, but certain who have erred have said these mounds existed already in the days of the flood of waters. Now those who have said these things have erred greatly from the truth, for before the flood of waters there were no idols in the earth, and it was not because of idols that the flood came, but because of the fornication of the daughters of Cain. And moreover, at that time there were no men on this earth, which was a waste and a desert. And our fathers were cast forth in the days of old, as it were, into exile, because they were not worthy to be neighbors of paradise. And through the ark they were driven forth to the mountains of Cardo, and from there they were scattered about through all the earth. For these mounds came into being because of idols, and in them are buried all the idols of that time, and all the devils also who dwell in them are in these mounds, and there is no mounds which hath not devils in it. Nimrod, the fire worshipper, and Yontan, the son of Noah. And in the days of Nimrod, the mighty man, or giant, a fire appeared which ascended from the earth, and Nimrod went down and looked at it, and worshipped it, and he established priests to minister there, and to cast incense into it. From that day the Persians began to worship fire, as they still do till this day. And Sison the king found a spring of water in Drogan, and he made a white horse and set it over it, and those who bathed in the water used to worship the horse. And from that time the Persians began to worship that horse. And Nimrod went to Yokdora of Nod, and when he arrived at the lake or sea of Atros, he found there Yontan the son of Noah. And Nimrod went down and bathed in the lake, and he came to Yontan and did homage unto him. And Yontan said, Thou art a king, doest thou homage unto me? And Nimrod said unto him, It is because of thee that I have come down here. And he remained with him for 3 years. And Yontan taught Nimrod wisdom and the art of revelation, and he said unto him, Come not back again to me. And when Nimrod went up from the east and began to practice the art of divining, very many men marveled at him. And when Idhashar, the priest who administered to the fire that ascended from the heaven, saw that Nimrod was practicing these exalted courses, he entreated the devil who appeared in connection with that fire to teach him the wisdom of Nimrod. And as the devils were in the habit of destroying those who came nigh unto them by sin, the devil said unto the priest, A man cannot become a priest and a Magian until he hath known carnally his mother and his daughter and his sister. And Idhashir the priest did this, and from that time the priest and the Magians and the Persians take their mothers and their sisters and their daughters to wife. And this Idhashir the Magian was the first to begin to study the signs of the zodiac and omens concerning luck and fate and happenings and motions of the eyes and eyelids, as well as all the other arts of the learnings of the Chaldees. Now all this learning is the error of devils, and those who practice it shall receive, together with the devils, the doom of the judgment. And because this art of divination, which was employed by Nimrod, was taught to him by Yontan, none of the orthodox doctors have suppressed it, nay, they have even practiced it. Now the Persians call it Geliana, which means revelation, and the Romans Estromion, which means astronomy. But that knowledge which the Magians have, astrology, is sorcery in the teachings of all devils. There are some who say that it doth indeed teach concerning luck and happenings of future events and fate, but these are all in error. Now Nimrod builded strong cities in the east, Babel, and Nineveh, and Rasan, and Salik, and Ctesiphon, and Adharbagan, and he made the fortresses. The history of Abraham. And Terah, the father of Abraham, lived 250 years, and he died. And Abraham and Lot buried him in Haran. And there God spoke unto Abraham, and said unto him, Get thee forth from thy land, and from among thy people, and come to the land which I will show thee. And Abraham took his household, Sarah his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and he went up to the land of the Amorites, and he was 75 years old when he crossed the desert from the Euphrates. And he was 80 years old when he pursued the kings and rescued Lot, his brother's son. When still a boy, Abraham had no belief in idols, and according to the Kebra Nagast, when he was just 12 years old, his father sent him to sell idols, and Abraham said, "These are not gods, and they cannot make deliverance." And he took away the idols to sell, even as his father had commanded him. And he said unto those unto whom he would sell them, "Do ye wish to buy goods that cannot make deliverance, things made of wood and stone and iron and brass, which the hand of an artificer hath made?" And they, the people, refused to buy the idols from Abraham, because he himself had defamed the images of his father. An old tradition says that Terah made idols of mud, and it is possible that some of these may be represented by the terracotta figures of gods and goddesses, which have been found in such large numbers in recent years at Ur and other ancient sites in Babylonia. And as he was returning, he stepped aside from the road, and he set the images down, and looked at them, and said unto them, "I wonder now if ye are able to do what I ask you at this moment, and whether ye are able to give me bread to eat or water to drink?" And none of them answered him, for they were pieces of stone and wood, and he abused them and heaped revilings upon them, and they spake never a word. And he buffeted the face of one, and kicked another with his feet, and a third he knocked over and broke to pieces with stones. And he said unto them, "If ye are unable to save yourselves from him that buffeteth you, and ye cannot requite with inquiry him that injureth you, how can ye be called gods? Those who worship you do so in vain, and as for myself, I utterly despise you, and ye shall not be my gods." Then he turned his face to the east, and he stretched out his hands and said, "Be thou my God, O Lord, creator of the heavens and the earth, creator of the sun and the moon, creator of the sea and the dry land, maker of the majesty of the heavens and the earth, and of that which is visible and that which is invisible. O maker of the universe, be thou my God. I place my trust in thee, and from this day forth I will place my trust in no other save thyself." And then there appeared unto him a chariot of fire, which blazed, and Abraham was afraid, and fell on his face on the ground. And God said unto him, "Fear thou not, stand upright." On the day of the birth of Abraham, the house shone with a bright light. Many people fell down, and there was a cry in a loud voice, which said, "Woe is me, woe is me! For he who shall crush my kingdom hath been born." And he who cried out wept, and described the events which should take place, saying, "It is he who shall burn down my abode." And there were among the people certain men who said, "Kill this child forthwith." And those who spake thus knew well that grace should be given to Abraham. And God set mercy in the heart of the father of Abraham, and he said to the Satans, "Whence come ye, O ye who tell me that I should kill my son, who is the gracious gift of God?" And he reared the child, and Abraham was circumcised by the hand of Gabriel and Michael, who helped him. And this can be found in the book of the mysteries of heaven and earth. Abraham and Melchizedek. And at that time Abraham had no son, because Sarah was barren. And when he returned from the battle of the kings, the agency of God called him, and he crossed the mountains of Jebus, and Melchizedek, the king of Shalem, the priest of the Most High God, went forth to meet him. And when Abraham saw Melchizedek, he made haste and fell upon his face, and did homage to him. And he rose up from the ground, and embraced him, and kissed him, and was blessed by him. And Melchizedek blessed Abraham. And Abraham gave Melchizedek tithes of everything which he had with him. And Melchizedek made him to participate in the holy mysteries of the bread of the offering and the wine of redemption. And after Melchizedek had blessed him, and made him to participate in the holy mysteries, God spake unto Abraham, and said unto him, Thy reward is exceedingly great, since Melchizedek hath blessed thee, and hath made thee to partake of bread and wine with him. I also will assuredly bless thee, and I will assuredly multiply thy seed. And when Abraham was 86 years old, Ishmael was born to him by Hagar, the Egyptian woman, whom Pharaoh had given to Sarah as a handmaiden. Now Sarah was the sister of Abraham on the father's side, because Terah took 2 women to wife. When Yanu, the mother of Abraham, died, Terah took to a wife whose name was Nahariath, or Shalmath, or Tonah, and of her Sarah was born. It was because of this fact that Abraham said, "She is my sister, the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother." The birth of Isaac. And Abraham was 99 years old when God went into his house and gave Sarah a son, and he was 100 years old when Isaac was born to him. And Isaac was 13 years old when his father took him and went up to the mountain of Yebus to Melchizedek, the priest of God, the Most High. Now Mount Yabos is the mountain of the Amorites, and in that place the cross of Christ was set up, and on it grew the tree which held the ram that saved Isaac. And that same place is the center of the earth, and the grave of Adam, and the altar of Melchizedek, and Golgotha, and Karkaphtha, and Gabbatha. And there David saw the angel bearing the sword of fire. There, too, Abraham took up Isaac his son for a burnt offering, and he saw the cross, and Christ, and the redemption of our father Adam. The tree was a symbol of the cross of Christ our Lord, and the ram caught in its branches was the mystery of the manhood of the Word, the only one. And because of this, Paul cried out and said, "If they had only known it, they were not crucifying the Lord of glory. Let the mouths of the heretics be stopped, who in their madness impute passibility to the eternal God." Now, when Christ was 8 years old, Joseph, the betrothed of Mary, rose up to circumcise the child according to the law, and he circumcised him according to the custom that was the law. In like manner, Abraham took up his son as an offering, but he at the same time foresaw in this act the crucifixion of Christ. And this thing did Christ openly proclaim before the multitudes of the Jews, saying, "Abraham, your father, wanted to see my days, and he saw and was glad." Abraham saw the day of the redemption of Adam, and he saw and rejoiced, and it was revealed unto him that Christ would suffer on behalf of Adam. The founding of Jerusalem. And in that same year in which Abraham offered up his son as an offering, in that same year, I say, Jerusalem was built, and the beginning of the building thereof was in this wise. Melchizedek having appeared and shown himself to men, the kings of the nation heard his story, and they gathered together and came unto him. And the names of the kings who built Jerusalem are as followed. These 12 kings gathered together and came to Melchizedek, king of Shalem, the priest of the Most High God. And when they saw his appearance and heard his words, they entreated him to go with them. And he said unto them, "I am not able to go from this place to any other." And they took counsel together about building him a city, and said to each other, "Verily, he is the king of the whole earth, and the father of all kings." And they built him a city, and made Melchizedek to live in it. And Melchizedek called the name thereof Jerusalem. And when Magog, the king of the south, heard of this, he came to him, and saw his appearance, and spake unto him, and gave him offerings and gifts. And Melchizedek was held in honor by all, and he was called the Father of Kings. Melchizedek. Now, as concerning what the apostle said, there was no beginning to his days and no end to his life, it has been thought by simple folk that he was not a man at all, and in their error they have said concerning him that he was God. God forbid that there should have been no beginning to his days or end to his life. The apostle spake thus because when Shem, the son of Noah, took away Melchizedek from his parents, no word is said as to how old he was when he went up from the east, and it is not said how old he was at the time of his departure from the world. Now, he was the son of Moloch, the son of Aparkshar, the son of Shem, and he was not the son of one of the patriarchs. And the apostle said that none of his father's family had ever been ministered at the altar. The name of his father is not written in the genealogies, because Matthew and Luke, the evangelists, only wrote down the names of their fathers, or in other words, the chief, the patriarchs, and for this reason neither name of his father nor the name of his mother is known. The apostle did not say that he had no parents, but only that they were not written down in Matthew and Luke. Qumros. And in the 100th year of the life of Abraham, there was a king in the east whose name was Qumros. He built Samosata after the name of his son Shemoshto, and Claudia or Claudius, after the name of his daughter Claude, and Purin, after the name of his son Poron. Nimrod finds Nisibis, Haran, and Edessa. And in the 50th year of the life of Ru, Nimrod went up and built Nisibis and Edessa and Haran, which is Edessa, and Haranith, the wife of Dasan, the priest of the mountain, surrounded it with a wall, and the people of Haran made a statue of her and worshipped her. And Baltan, who was given to Tammuz, now because of Belshazzar loved her, Tammuz fled before him, set fire to Haran, and burned it. The death of Sarah. And when Sarah the wife of Abraham died, Abraham took to wife Kentorah, the daughter of Bachtor, the king of the desert. And there were born unto him by her Zamron, and Yakshan, and Madan, and Median, and Ashbach, and Shol. A marginal note in the Syriac MS says that these sons of Kentorah are called sons of Duran by the prophet, and from these are sprung the Arabs. Isaac and Rebekah. And when Isaac was 40 years old, Eliezer, a son of the house of Abraham, went down and brought Rebekah from the east, and Isaac took to her to wife. And when Abraham died, Isaac buried him by the side of Sarah. And when Isaac was 60 years old, Rebekah became with child of Esau and Jacob. And being sorely afflicted, she went to Melchizedek, and he prayed over her, and said unto her, 2 nations are in thy womb, and 2 people shall be removed from thy loins, that is to say, shall go forth from thy womb. 1 nation shall be stronger than the other, and the elder shall be in subjection to the younger, that is to say, Esau shall be in subjection to Jacob. The founding of Jericho. And in the 67th year of the life of Isaac, Jericho was built by 7 kings, namely the king of the Hittites, and the king of the Amorites, and the king of the Girgantes, and the king of the Jebusites, and the king of the Canaanites, and the king of the Hivites, and the king of the Perizzites, and each of them surrounded it with a wall. Now the son of Mizraim, the king of the Egyptians, had founded Jericho in olden time. And Ishmael made a mill of the hands in the desert, a mill of slavery. Jacob's ladder. And in the 103rd year of his life, Isaac blessed Jacob, who was 40 years old, and having received the blessing from his father, he went down into the desert of Beersheba, and laid down to sleep there. And when he was lying down, he took a stone and made a pillow of it. And he saw in his dream, and behold, a ladder was set upon the earth, and the top of it was in the heavens, and the angels of God were going up and coming down, and the Lord stood at the top of it. And Jacob woke up from his sleep and said, This is truly the house of God. And he took the stone of his pillow, and made it an altar, and he anointed it with oil. And he vowed a vow and said, Of everything which I have will I tithe for this stone. Now it is manifest to those who possess understanding that the ladder which Jacob saw symbolizeth the cross of our Redeemer. And the angels who were going up and down were the ministers of Zechariah and Mary, and the Magi, and the shepherds. And the Lord who was standing at the top of the ladder symbolized Christ, who stood on the cross that he might go down to redeem us. Jacob and baptism. And when God had shown the blessed Jacob the cross of Christ by means of the ladder of the angels, and the coming down of Christ for our redemption, and the church, the house of God, and the altar by means of the stone, and the offerings by means of the tithes, and the anointing by means of the oil, Jacob again went down to the east, that there God might show him baptism. And Jacob looked and beheld 3 flocks of sheep lying down by a well, and there was a great stone placed over the mouth of the well. And Jacob drew nigh, and rolled away the stone from the mouth of the well, and watered the sheep of his mother's brother. And having watered the flocks, he took Rachel and kissed her. Now by well the blessed Jacob indicated or depicted baptism, which was covered over from the races of men and generations and tribes. And the 3 flocks of sheep which were lying down by the well are a type of the 3 divisions and 3 groups who came for baptism, namely men, women, and children. And that Jacob saw Rachel coming with the flocks, and that he neither embraced her nor kissed her until he had rolled away the stone from the well, and she had watered the flocks. And in accordance with the law of the sons of the church, who neither embrace nor kiss the Lamb of Christ until baptism hath opened the way, they go down into the waters and put on strength from them, and then the sons of the church embrace and kiss. And as Jacob served with Laban for 7 years, and the woman he loved was not given to him, so also was it with the Jews, who served Pharaoh, king of Egypt, in slavery and went forth. For the covenant of the church, the bride of Christ, was not given unto them, but that covenant which was old and worn out and of no effect. Now the eyes of Leah, the first woman whom Jacob took to wife, were hateful, whilst the eyes of Rachel were beautiful, and her countenance was radiant. A covering was laid over the face of the first covenant, so that the children of Israel might not see the beauty thereof. As for the second covenant, it was wholly light. Jacob's sons and the death of Isaac. Jacob was 77 years old when he received the blessing of Isaac, his father, and he was 89 years old when he begot Reuben, his firstborn, by Leah. The sons of Jacob are these: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. These are the sons of Leah. Joseph and Benjamin were the sons of Rachel. Gad and Asher were the sons of Zilpah, the maiden, or the handmaiden of Leah. And Dan and Naphtali were the sons of Bilhah, the handmaiden of Rachel. And after 20 years Jacob returned to Isaac his father, and all the days of the life of Isaac were 180 years, until the 31st year of the life of Levi, and he died in the 120th year of the life of Jacob. 23 years after Jacob went up from Haran, Joseph was sold to the Midianites. He was sold during the lifetime of Isaac, and they mourned for him. When Isaac died, Jacob and Esau his sons buried him with Abraham and Sarah. 7 years later, Rebekah died and was buried with Abraham and Isaac and Sarah, and Rachel died and was buried with them. And Judah, the son of Jacob, took unto himself to wife Shua the Canaanites, and his father was grieved because he had taken to wife a woman of the seed of Canaan. And Jacob said unto Judah, May the Lord God of our fathers Abraham and Isaac not permit the seed of Canaan to be mingled with our families. And there were born unto Judah by Shua the Canaanite woman, Onan, and Shelah. And Judah took a wife for his firstborn, Tamar, and he consorted with her unnaturally, and God put him to death. And Judah gave Tamar to Onan, and as soon as his seed became available for Tamar, he wasted it, and him also did God put to death. Thus God did not permit the seed of Canaan to mingle with the seed of Jacob, even as Jacob prayed God that the seed of Canaan, the firstborn of the lascivious Ham, might not be mingled amongst the generations of the fathers. And God bade Tamar go out to the roadside, and Judah lay with her in the passion of fornication, and she conceived and brought forth Perez, and Zerah. Jacob in Egypt. And Jacob and all his descendants went down into Egypt to Joseph, and he lived in Egypt 17 years. And Jacob died, being 140 years old, and Joseph was 56 years old when his father died, in the 12th year of Kahath. And the wise physicians of Pharaoh embalmed him, and Joseph took up to him to Canaan and buried him with Abraham and Isaac his father. The genealogies of the tribes and the children of Israel. Now there are certain doctors who trace the genealogies of the tribes from the death of Jacob, and who mix them together, but they do not do this in the light of knowledge. They set in the midst two genealogies, one of the tribes and the other of the children of Israel. Now fix thine attention on these generations, and how they became mixed together. When they went forth from Egypt, Judah begot Pharez. Pharez begot Hezron. Hezron begot Haram. And Haram begot Amminadab, and Amminadab begot Nahshon. And Nahshon was he who became prince of Judah. And Amminadab gave the sister of Nahshon to so in the text you read Eliezer. And the son of Aaron, the priest, of her was born Phinehas, the great priest, who prayed, and the plague was stayed. Behold, I have shown thee that from Amminadab the priesthood of the children of Israel was transmitted by the sister of Nahshon, and the kingdom by Nahshon her brother. Observe also that the priesthood and the kingdom were transmitted by Judah to the children of Israel. And Nahshon begot Shelah, that is to say, Salmon, and Shelah begot Boaz. Observe now that the kingdom went forth from Boaz and Ruth, the Moabites, for the old man Boaz took Ruth to wife, so that Lot, the son of Abraham's brother, might have participation in the transmission of the kingdom. And God did not deprive the righteous man Lot of the reward of his labor, because he had suffered in exile with Abraham, and he received the angels of God in peace. And that the righteous man Lot might not be reviled because he slept with his daughters, God granted that the royal succession might be maintained by the seed of both, and that Christ should be born of the seed of Lot and Abraham. And from the seed of Ruth, the Moabites, Obed was born, and from Obed, Jesse, and from Jesse, David, and from David, Solomon. And these are the descendants of Ruth, the Moabites, the daughters of Lot. And of Naamah the Ammonites, another daughter of Lot, whom Solomon took to wife, was born Rehoboam, who reigned after Solomon. Now Solomon married many wives, 700 free-born women, and 300 concubines. And of the 1,000 women which he took to wife, he had no son except from Naamah the Ammonites. And why was it that God did not give him a son from these others? It was in order to prevent the wicked seed of the Canaanites and Jebusites and Amorites and Hittites and Girgashites and the seed of the peoples whom God had hated from mingling in the succession of the genealogy of Jesus Christ. The chiefs of Israel born in Egypt. Now the succession of the children of Israel is this: Levi and Amram and Moses and Joshua the son of Nun and Caleb the son of Jephunneh. These were born in Egypt. Moses. And when Moses was born, he was cast into the river, and Shipor, or in Ethiopic Shipporah, the Egyptian woman, the daughter of Pharaoh, took him up, and he lived in the house of Pharaoh for 40 years. And then he killed Phethcom, the Egyptian, the chief of the bakers of Pharaoh. Now this was noised abroad in the house of Pharaoh, after Pharaoh's daughter Machri, who was called Shipor-Meseren, or the trumpet of Egypt, was dead. And Moses was afraid, and he fled to Midian, to Reuel the Cushite, the priest of Midian. And Moses took to wife Zipporah, the Cushite woman, daughter of the priest, and the 2 sons were born to him, Gershom and Eliezer. And in the 2nd year of the life of Moses, Joshua the son of Nun was born in Egypt. And Moses was 80 years old when God talked with him from out of the bush, and became of his fear his tongue halted, even as he said to God, Behold, my Lord, from the day wherein thou didst speak to me, I have been halting of tongue. Moses lived in Egypt 40 years, and in the house of the priest of Midian 40 years, and he passed 40 years in governing the people. And he died at the age of 120 years on Mount Nebo. The successors of Moses. And Joshua the son of Nun was the governor of the children of Israel for 27 years. And after the death of Joshua the son of Nun, Cushan the wicked was lord over the people for 80 years. And Othniel the son of Kenaz, the brother of Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, was lord over Israel for 40 years. And then the children of Israel were in subjection to the Moabites for 18 years. And Ahor the son of Gerah ruled the children of Israel for 80 years. And in the 26th year of his life, the 4,000 years came to an end. The 5th 1,000 years, from the 26th year of Ehud's life to the 2nd year of the reign of Cyrus. Jabin, who was dried up in body, ruled 20 years. Deborah and Barak ruled them 40 years. The children of Israel were in subjection to the Midianites 7 years, and God delivered them by the hands of Gideon, who ruled them 40 years. Abimelech, his son, reigned after him 3 years. Tola, the son of Puah, ruled them 23 years. The Yahir, the Gileadite, 22 years, and again the children of Israel were in subjection to the Ammonites 18 years, and God delivered them by the hand of Naphtah, the man who offered up his daughter as a sacrifice, and he ruled them 6 years. Ibzan of Bethlehem, who is Nashon, ruled them 7 years. Elon, who was from Zebulun, ruled them 10 years. Abdon, the son of Hillel, the Pirathonite, ruled them 8 years, and the children of Israel were in subjection to the Philistines 40 years, and God delivered them by the hand of Samson, and he ruled them 20 years. And the children of Israel lived without a governor for 18 years, and then Eli the priest rose up and ruled them 40 years. And Samuel rose up over them and ruled them 20 years. And in the days of Samuel the children of Israel provoked to wrath God, who had delivered them from the servitude of the Egyptians. And they made Saul the son of Kish king, and he reigned over them 40 years. And in the days of Saul lived Goliath, a giant of the Philistines. He came nigh and reviled Israel, and blasphemed against God. And David the son of Jesse killed him. And David was praised in songs by the daughters of Israel. And Saul persecuted him. And the Philistines slew Saul, because he forsook the Lord, and took refuge with the devils. David reigned over the children of Israel 40 years, and Solomon his son reigned 40 years. And Solomon did great and wonderful things, and it was he who sent to Ophir and brought gold from the mountains of gold, and the ships sailed the sea for 36 months, and then came forth. It was he who built Palmyra in the wilderness, and he carried out there great and wonderful works. And when Solomon passed the borders of the mountain which is called Sair, he found there the altar which Piozakar and Piorzani and Nesnador had built. These were they whom Nimrod the giant sent to Balaam, the priest of the mountain of Sair, because he heard that he wont to consult the signs of the zodiac, and when they were passing the skirts of the mountain, they built there an altar to the sun. And when Solomon saw it, he built a city there and called it Neapolis, more correctly Heliopolis, that is to say, city of the sun. And Solomon also built Aradus in the midst of the sea, and he became so famous and renowned that the report of his wise acts went out into all the lands of the earth. And the queen of Sheba went to hold converse with him, and Solomon loved Hiram, king of Tyre, greatly. And Hiram reigned in Tyre 500 years, from the days of the kingdom of David to the days of the kingdom of Zedekiah, and of all the kings of the children of Israel. And at length he forgot that he was a man, and he blasphemed and said, I am God, and I sit upon the throne of God in the middle of the sea. And Nebuchadnezzar the king killed him. The purple linen of Tyre. And in the days of Hiram, the purple-colored apparel worn by the kings first appeared. As a dog was running along the seashore at Tyre, he saw a purple shellfish coming out of the water, and he bit it, and straightway his mouth was filled with blood of that shellfish. And a certain shepherd who saw the dog bought a piece of a woolen cloth, and wiped the dog's mouth with it. And he made that piece of woolen cloth into a crown, and set it upon his head. And as he walked along in the sun, those who saw him thought that rays of fire were coming forth from his head. And when Hiram heard of this, he sent for the man. And when he saw the woolen cloth, he marveled and was astonished. And all the dyers gathered together and marveled at it. And they set out to inquire into this matter. And they found some of these shellfish, and rejoiced greatly. The apostasy of Solomon. And Solomon waxed exceedingly great, and the food provided for his table every day consisted of 40 oxen, 100 head of sheep, 30 measures of fine flour, 60 measures of wheat, and 300 measures of wine, and besides all this, stags and gazelle, and wild antelopes, and other creatures of the desert. And he became forward and transgressed the law, and hearkened not to the commands of his father. And he took to wife 1,000 women from all the peoples whom God hated. And in the time of his old age he gave himself up to women, and he let them play with him, and he hearkened to his words, and did their will. And he denied the God of David his father, and he builded altars to devils, and offered up sacrifices to idols and graven images, and he worshipped the works of the hands. And God turned away his face from him, and he died. And he reigned in Jerusalem 46 years. Rehoboam. And Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, reigned after him. Rehoboam was 41 years old when he began to reign, and he polluted Jerusalem with fornication, and the altars of devils, and the stink of heathendom, and the kingdom of Israel was rent in twain. And in the 5th year of his kingdom, Shishak, the king of Egypt, went up against Jerusalem. And he carried off all the treasure of the service of the house of the Lord, and all the treasure of the kingdom of David, and of that of Solomon, and the vessels of gold, and the vessels of silver. And he magnified himself, and said, I am not taking away treasure which is yours, but the wealth which your fathers took out of Egypt. And Rehoboam died in the heathen practices of his father Solomon. Shishak was the first king of the 22nd dynasty, and reigned about 20 years, that is from 947 to 928 BC before Christ, and he was of Libyan origin. The Egyptian form of his name is Shashank, and it is found with his title Beloved of Amen. And Abijah his son reigned after him, and he destroyed Jerusalem with fornication and with heathen works. Now Melchah, the mother of Abdshalom, was his mother, and he died in the heathen practices of his father. And Asa his son reigned after him for 40 years in Jerusalem. He did that which was good before the Lord, and he put away fornication from Jerusalem, and made an end of the heathen practices of his people, for he kept the commandments of God. And he drove them, the idolaters, out of his palace or kingdom, and made them to be a mockery before all the people, because they taught the offerings of sacrifices to idols. And Zerah of Judah went up against him, and God humbled him before Asa, and Asa died in righteousness like his father David. And Jehoshaphat his son reigned after him, and he walked in the ways of Asa his father, and he did that which was pleasing before God. And God was angry with him because he was a friend of the house of Ahab, and for this reason God did not permit him to bring out gold from Ophir. Now he made ships to send thither, and they were broken to Ezion-Geber. He was 32 years old when he began to reign, and the name of his mother was Azubah, the daughter of Shelah. And Jehoshaphat died in his righteousness. Joram reigned after him, and he was 32 years old when he began to reign. He reigned 8 years in Jerusalem. He did not do what was pleasing before God, for he sacrificed all the altars of devils, and he died in his heathen practices. Ahaziah his son reigned after him, and he was 22 years old when he began to reign. He lived for 1 year in Jerusalem, and did evil things before God in that year. Because of the wickedness of iniquity which he wrought, God delivered him into the hands of his enemies, and they killed him. When he was dead, his mother Athaliah killed all the royal children of the house of David, imagining that she would uproot the children of the Jews. The only person of the seed of the royal house whom she did not slay was Joash, whom Joshba, the daughter of Joram, the son of Jehoshaphat, carried away secretly and hid with her in her house. The reign of Ahab's sister. And the sister of Ahab reigned 7 years in Jerusalem, and she polluted the city with fornication, for she commanded the women to play the whore without fear, and the men to commit adultery with the wives of their neighbors without incurring any penalty. And she herself committed fornication like Jezebel, and she adopted all the heathen practices of the house of Ahab in Jerusalem. The reign of Joash. And after 7 years the children of Jerusalem considered whom they should make their king. And Joadiah the priest gathered them together in the house of the Lord, in the temple which Solomon had built.
And when the captains of thousands and the captains of hundreds had gathered together, Jehoiada the priest said unto them, Whom, say ye, shall be king and sit upon the throne of David, except a king and the son of a king? And when he showed him to them, they rejoiced with an exceedingly great joy. And the captains of thousands and the captains of hundreds and the runners and the messengers brought the kingdom to the house of the Lord. And the soldiers who were armed surrounded him on all sides. And Jehoiada the priest set him upon the throne of David his father. And Joash was 7 years old when he began to reign. And he reigned 40 years in Jerusalem. And the name of his mother was Zibiah, and she was from Beersheba. And Athaliah, the mother of Ahaziah, was killed. And Joash requited with evil the kindness which Jehoiada had done with him. And after his death he shed the innocent blood of his sons. And Joash died, and Amaziah his son reigned after him. Amaziah was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. And the name of his mother was Joadan. And Amaziah died, and Uzziah his son reigned after him. Uzziah was 16 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 50 years in Jerusalem. And the name of his mother was Jechaliah. And he did that which was good before the Lord. Now he made bold to go into the Holy of Holies, and he took the censer from the priest of God, Azariah, and burned incense in the temple of the Lord. And because he did this, leprosy covered his face. And because Isaiah the prophet did not rebuke him, he was prevented from prophesying until Uzziah died, and Jotham his son reigned in his stead. Jotham was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 16 years in Jerusalem. And the name of his mother was Jerusha, the daughter of Zadok. And he did that which was good before the Lord, and he died, and Ahaz his son reigned after him. Ahaz, a vassal of the king of Assyria. Ahaz was 20 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 16 years in Jerusalem. And the name of his mother was Aphan, the daughter of Levi. And he did that which was evil before the Lord, and he sacrificed to devils. Tiglath-Pileser, the king of Assyria, went up against him, and Ahaz wrote himself down in his letter as his servant. And the Assyrian held him in subjection. And Ahaz sent to the king of Assyria the gold and silver which were in the house of the Lord. And in the days the children of Israel were carried off into captivity. And the king sent for the men who had come from Babel, so that they might dwell in the land instead of the children of Israel, because they could kill the lions. And the king of Assyria sent to them Ori the priest, and he taught them the laws. And Ahaz died, and Hezekiah his son reigned after him. Hezekiah. Hezekiah was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. And the name of his mother was Abi, the daughter of Zechariah. And he did that which was pleasing for the Lord, for he smashed the altars, and he cut in pieces the serpent of brass which Moses made in the wilderness, because the children of Israel used to worship it, and he abolished heathen practices in Jerusalem. In the 4th year of his reign, Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, came up and carried away captive the rest of the children of Israel, and he sent them into Mediah, beyond Babel. And in the 20th year of Hezekiah, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came up and took all the cities and towns of Judah, but through the prayer of Hezekiah, Jerusalem was saved. He captured 46 of Hezekiah's strongholds and brought out from them 200,150 people, and horses, mules, asses, camels, oxen, and innumerable sheep. He then shut up Hezekiah like a caged bird. Hezekiah's soldiers deserted, and he sent his envoy to Nineveh to pay his tribute to Sennacherib. And this was 30 talents of gold, 800 talents of silver, precious stones, eye paint, couches and chairs of ivory, hides, tusks, precious woods, and his daughters with their attendants and musicians. And Hezekiah became sick unto death, and it was grievous unto him, and he wept.
And there were certain men who blamed him, but why his sickness was grievous unto him, they never troubled to acquaint themselves. Now the sorrow of Hezekiah came upon him, because when he became sick unto death, he had no son to reign after him. And when he looked with the eyes of his soul, and saw that he had no son to reign after him, he was afflicted, and wept, and said, Woe is me, for I must die childless, and that blessing which hath been given unto us for 46 generations hath been cut off by me this day. I have become the destroyer of the kingdom of David, and the succession of the kings of Judah hath been cut off this day. This was the cause of the sorrow of Hezekiah. And after he recovered from his sickness, he waited 14 years, and then Manasseh was born to him. And Hezekiah died in great content, and left a son to sit upon the throne of David his father. Manasseh. Manasseh was 12 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 55 years in Jerusalem. And the name of his mother was Hephzibah. He was a man who was more evil and iniquitous than all those who had lived before him. He had builded altars to devils and sacrificed to idols, and he filled Jerusalem with iniquity and provoked God to wrath. And because Isaiah the prophet rebuked him, he threatened him and sent men who were sons of iniquity, and they saw Isaiah the prophet in twain what they saw between two pieces of wood from his head downwards to his feet. And Isaiah was 120 years old when they sawed him in twain, and he had been the prophet of God for 90 years. And Manasseh repented after he had slain Isaiah, and he put sackcloth on his body, and decreed fasting for himself, and he ate bread with tears all the days of his life, because he had committed iniquity, and had slain the prophet. And Manasseh died, and Amon reigned after him. Amon was 22 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 2 years in Jerusalem, and the name of his mother was Mashillemath. And Amon did evil before the Lord, and he made his sons to pass through fire. He died, and Hosea his son reigned after him. Hosea was 8 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 31 years in Jerusalem, and the name of his mother was Jedidah, the daughter of Azariah from Bezkoth. And he did what was good before the Lord, and he walked in all the way wherein his father David had walked. And he turned aside neither to the right hand nor to the left. And Pharaoh the lame killed him, and Joazol his son reigned after him. And Joazol was 23 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 3 months in Jerusalem. And the name of his mother was Hamtal, the daughter of Jeremiah from Lebnah. And he did what was evil before the Lord, even as Manasseh had done. And Pharaoh the lame, king of Egypt, took him prisoner in Dibloth in the land of Hamath, whilst he was king in Jerusalem, and he laid tribute on the land, 100 talents of silver and 10 talents of gold. And Pharaoh the lame made Eliakim the son of Jonah king instead of Hosea his father, and he made his name to be Joachim. And he carried away Joahaz, and he went to Egypt and died there. And Joachim gave silver and gold to Pharaoh. He laid the payment of silver and gold on the land according to the word of Pharaoh's mouth. Every man according to what it was right for him to pay, brought silver and gold from the people of the land according to the command of the mouth of Pharaoh the lame. Joachim was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem, and the name of his mother was Zebedah, the daughter of Pedaiah from Ramah. And he did that which was evil before the Lord, even as his fathers had done. In his days Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babel, went up against Jerusalem, and Joachim became his vessel for 3 years. Then he turned and rebelled against him, and the Lord stirred up bands of robbers against him because of his sins. And Joachim slept with his fathers, and Joachim his son reigned after him. And the king of Egypt did not come forth again out of his country, for the king of Babel captured all the land that belonged to the king of Egypt, from the river of Egypt to the river of Euphrates. Joachim was 18 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 3 months in Jerusalem, and the name of his mother was Nehushta, the daughter of Elnathan from Jerusalem. And he did that which was evil before the Lord, even as his father had done. And that time Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babel, went up against Jerusalem, and the king of Babel took him with him in the 8th year of his kingdom. And he brought out from there all the treasure of the house of the Lord, and the treasure of the king's house, and he carried off into captivity to Babel all the people of Jerusalem, and Joachim, and his mother, and his wives, and his nobles. And the king brought captive to Babel all the men who had made war. And the king of Babel made Mathaniah, the uncle of Joachim, king in his stead, and he called his name Zedekiah. The capture of Jerusalem. Zedekiah was 20 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. And the name of his mother was Hamtal, the daughter of Jeremiah, from Libnah. And he did that which was evil before the Lord, even as did Joachim. And the wrath of the Lord was fell upon Jerusalem. And Zedekiah rebelled against the king of Babel. And in the 9th year of his kingdom, Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babel, came against Jerusalem, and the city was fettered with affliction until the 11th year of King Zedekiah. And the city was rent open, and all the mighty men of war fled from the city by night by the way of the plain. And the soldiers of the Chaldeans pursued the king, and they overtook him on the plain of Jericho, and all his soldiers were driven away from him. And the Chaldeans captured Zedekiah, and took him up to the king of Babel at Debloth, and he passed judgment upon him. And the king of Babel slew the sons of Zedekiah the king before his eyes, and he blinded the eyes of Zedekiah, and bound him in chains, and carried him to Babel. And Simeon the high priest, because he had freedom of speech with the commander of the Chaldean army, made entreaty to him, and the commander of the army gave him all the books of the scriptures, and did not burn them. And Simeon the high priest gathered them together, and cast them into a pit or a dry well. And Jerusalem was laid waste and made desolate, and no man remained therein except Jeremiah the prophet, who sat and raised lamentations over it for 20 years. And Jeremiah the prophet died in Samaria, and the priest buried him in Jerusalem, according to the oath which the prophet made him to swear. Now up to the time of the destruction of Jerusalem, the Hebrew, Greek, and Syrian writers were in possession of the truth, and they were able to produce the registers of the genealogies of the tribes and the people. But from the destruction of Jerusalem and onwards, there has been no truth in their writings except as regards the heads of the tribes, or the patriarchs, and they are unable to prove whence the succession of the priests took its reign. Joachim. And Joachim was bound in prison for 37 years, and after he came forth from prison, he took to wife Gulith, the daughter of Eliakim, and he begot by her in Babel Salathiel, and Joachim died in Babel. And Salathiel took to wife Hetboth, the daughter of Halkanah, and he begot by her Zerubbabel, who took to wife Malkath, the daughter of Ezra the scribe, but no son was born to him by her in Babel. In the days of Zerubbabel, the prince of Judah, Cyrus the Persian reigned in Babel. Cyrus. And Cyrus took to wife the daughter of Zelathiel, the sister of Zerubbabel, and he took to her to wife according to the law of Persians, and made her his queen. And she entreated Cyrus to bring about the return of the children of Israel to Jerusalem. And inasmuch as Zerubbabel was her brother, she was very insistent about the return to Jerusalem of those who had been led away into captivity. Now Cyrus loved his wife as he loved himself, and he did for her what she had wished. And he sent forth heralds into all the land of Babel, ordering all the children of Israel to gather themselves together. And when they were gathered together, Cyrus said unto Zerubbabel his wife's brother, Rise up, and take with thee all the children of thy people, and go up to Jerusalem in peace, and rebuild the city of thy fathers, and dwell and reign therein. And because Cyrus brought about the return of the children of Israel to Jerusalem, God said, I have taken my servant Cyrus by his right hand. And the name of Cyrus was called My Shepherd, the Anointed of the Lord, because his seed was received into the seed of David through Mashianoth, the sister of Zerubbabel, whom he had taken to wife. And the children of Israel went up from Babel, and Zerubbabel became king over them, and Joshua the son of Jozadak the son of Aaron was high priest, even as the angel showed Zechariah the prophet, and said unto him, These are the sons of the oil of consecration. And the people of the captivity went up in the 2nd year of Cyrus, and the 5,000 years came to an end. The 500 years from the 2nd year of Cyrus to the birth of Christ. Now when the people had gone up to Jerusalem, they had no books of the prophets. And Ezra the scribe went down into the pit, wherein Simeon had cast the books, and he found a censer full of fire, and the perfume of the incense which rose up from it. And thrice he took some of the dust of those books, and cast it into his mouth, and straightway God made to abide in him the spirit of prophecy, and he renewed all the books of the prophets. And that same fire which was found in the pit became the holy fire in the house of the Lord. And Zerubbabel reigned in Jerusalem, and Joshua the son of Jozadak was high priest, and Ezra was the scribe of the law and the prophets. And the children of Israel celebrated a Passover when they went up from Babel. These are the 3 Passovers which the children of Israel kept. The first was kept in Egypt in the days of Moses. The second was kept in the reign of Josiah. The third was kept when they went up from the land of Babel. And now an end hath been made to the Passover for them forever. From the first captivity of Jerusalem, that in which Daniel went down into captivity, to the reign of Cyrus the Persian, was 70 years according to the prophecy of Jeremiah. And the children of Israel began the rebuilding of the temple in the days of Zerubbabel, and Joshua the son of Jozadak, and Ezra the scribe, and the building thereof was finished in 46 years, even as it is written in the Holy Gospel. The genealogies of the later Israelites. Now the genealogy of the tribes or families was lost by the scribes, and they were unable to show either whence the heads of family took their wives, or whence they came. I, however, possess the knowledge of the correct genealogy, and will show the truth to every man when the children of Israel went up from Babylon. And because none of the early writers could discover the order of succession of the generations of their fathers, the Jews urged the sons of the church very strongly to show them who were the fathers of the blessed Mary in the order of the succession of their families. And they pressed the children of the church to inquire into the genealogy of the families of their fathers, and to show them the truth. For the Jews call Mary an adulteress, and here the mouth of the Jews is stopped, and they believe that Mary was of the seed of the house of David and of Abraham. Now the Jews have no table of succession which showeth them the true order of the families of their fathers, because their books have been burned thrice, once in the days of Antiochus, who raised up a persecution against them, and polluted the temple of the Lord, and forced them to offer up sacrifices unto idols, the second time in the days of, and the third time in the days of Herod, when Jerusalem was destroyed. Because of this, the Jews were greatly grieved, for they had no trustworthy table of the succession of the generations of their fathers. And they toiled eagerly that they might obtain the truth, but they were unable to do so. Now the Jews had many writers, and each of them wrote what he pleased, and no 2 of them agreed in what they wrote, because they could not stand on a foundation of truth. And even our own writers, the children of the church, cannot show us the certainty of the real truth. They cannot show how the ascent of the body of Adam to Golgotha took place, nor whence came the fathers or ancestors of Melchizedek, and the fathers of the blessed woman Mary. And the children of Israel, being urged by the church, and being unable to ascertain the truth, waxed reckless, and wrote as it were in the madness of error.
Here the text is faulty and incomplete. And as concerning the table of succession of the 63 families which reach from Adam to Christ, the Greek writers and the Hebrew writers and the Syrian writers can neither show whence each head of family took to his wife, nor whose daughter she was. Now each divine doctor or teacher has laid down for the church one true doctrine, and they have given unto believers the armor wherewith they can fight and overcome her enemies. Besides this, the grace of Christ hath granted unto us that which was lacking in them, and this we will cast into the rich treasury of their knowledge. And this, with great diligence, we have bestirred ourselves to do, even as our truly loving brother in Christ, the illustrious Nemesius, greatly desireth. And although I have been hindered through my dilatoriness, thou thy love of learning not been dilatory, and because of thy loving kindness towards me, and also because I myself am eager not to withhold from thee that which thou requirest of me, I will here write down the true table of succession. Here, O my brother Nemesius, the following table of succession which I write for thee. None of the other doctors hath been able to light upon it. The following are the 63 generations from which the incarnation of Christ is descended, and their order is thus. The genealogy of Mary. And because Joseph was the son of Mary's uncle by the foreknowledge of God, who knew that Mary would be certainly attacked by the Jews, Mary was given to Joseph, who was the son of her uncle, that he might take care of her. Observe, O our brother Nemesius, that the fathers of the blessed woman Mary belonged to the succession of the generations of David. The birth of Christ. Observe now, O thou lover of learning, our brother Nemesius, in the 42nd year of the kingdom of Augustus, Christ was born in Bethlehem of Judah, as it is written in the Holy Gospel. The Star and the Magi. Now it was 2 years before Christ was born that the star appeared to the Magi. They saw the star in the firmament of heaven, and the brilliancy of its appearance was brighter than that of every other star. And within it was a maiden carrying a child, and a crown was set upon his head. Now it was the custom of the ancient kings and the Magi of the Chaldeans to consult the signs of the zodiac about all the affairs of their lives. And when the Magi saw that the star, they were perturbed and terrified and afraid, and the whole land of Persia was disturbed. And the kings and the Magi and the Chaldeans and the wise men of Persia were stupefied, and they were exceedingly afraid of the portent which they saw. And they said, Peradventure the king of the Greeks hath determined to wage war against the land of Nimrod. And the Magi and the Chaldeans were terrified, and they consulted their books of wisdom. And through the might of the wisdom of their books they understood and learned, and stood upon the strength of the truth. Now, in truth, the Magi of the Chaldeans discovered that by means of the motions of the stars, to which they gave the name of the signs of the zodiacs, they were able to know and understand the strength or importance of events before they took place. And this same knowledge is also given to those who go down into the sea, and by the motions of the stars they know beforehand when there is going to be a disturbance of the winds, and when a violent storm is going to rise up against them, and whenever they are about to be threatened with danger from the winds and waves. Thus also was it with Magi. When they saw and read in the revelation of Nimrod, they discovered therein that a king was born in Judah, and the whole path of the dispensation of Christ was revealed unto them. And the signs of the zodiac are as followed. And straightway, according to what they had received from the tradition which had been handed down to them by their fathers, they left the east and went up to the mountains of Nod, which lie inside the entrances to the east from the lands on the skirts of the north. And they took from them gold and myrrh and frankincense. And from this passage understand, O my brother Nemesius, that the Magi knew the whole service of the dispensation of our Redeemer through the offerings which they brought. The gold was for a king, the myrrh for a physician, and the frankincense for a priest. For the Magi knew who he was, and that he was a king and a physician and a priest. Now when the son of the king of Sheba was a little boy, his father brought him to a rabbi, and he learned the book of the Hebrews better than all his companions and his fellow countrymen. And he said unto all his slaves, It is written in all the books of genealogies that the king shall be born in Bethlehem. The names of the Magi. These are they who bore offerings to the kings, the sons of kings. The Magi in Jerusalem. And the Magi, having made ready to go up, the kingdom of the mighty men of war was perturbed and terrified, and there was with the Magi so mighty a following that all the cities of the east were in dismay before them, and Jerusalem also. And when they entered the presence of Herod, he trembled before them, and he commanded them, saying, Depart in peace, and seek diligently for the young child, and when ye have found him, come and show me, that I too may go and make obeisance unto him. Through deceit was hidden in Herod's heart, he offered homage with his mouth. Now when the Magi went up to Jerusalem, there was great commotion in Judea, because of the edict of Augustus Caesar, which commanded that every man should be registered in his country and in the city of his fathers. Because of this Herod was greatly perturbed, and he said unto the Magi, Go ye and search for him. Now the Magi are called Magi because of the garb of Magianism, in which the heathen kings arrayed themselves whenever so they offered up a sacrifice and made offerings to their gods. They made use of two different kinds of apparel, that which appertained to royalty they wore inside, and that which appertained to Magianism outside. And thus also was it with those who went up prepared to make offerings to Christ, and they were arrayed in both kinds of apparel. And when the Magi had gone forth from Jerusalem and from the presence of Herod, that same star which had been their guide on the road appeared to them, and they rejoiced greatly. And the star went on before them until they entered the cave, where they saw the young child swathed in bands and laid in a manger. Whilst they were on their way up thither, they said within themselves, When we arrive there, we shall see mighty and wonderful things, according to the law and custom which prevail among royal personages when a king is born. Thus did they think that they would find in the land of Israel a royal palace and couches of gold with cushions laid upon them, and the king and the son of the king arrayed in purple, and awestruck soldiers and companies of royal troops, and the nobles of the kingdom praying him honored by presenting gifts, and tables laid out with meats fit for the king, and vessels of drink standing in rows, and men servants and women servants serving in fear. Such were the things which the Magi expected to see, but they saw them not. They saw sights which were far better than those which they went into the cave. They saw Joseph sitting in astonishment, and Mary in a state of wonderment. But there was no couch with cushions laid upon it, and no table with food laid upon it, and no sign of the preparations which accompany royal state. And although they saw all this humble estate and poverty, they had no doubts in their minds, but they drew nigh in fear, and made obeisance to him in honor. And they offered unto him gold and myrrh and frankincense. And it was very grievous unto Mary and Joseph that they had nothing to set before them, but the Magi fed themselves with food of their own providing. The circumcision of Christ. Now Christ was 8 days old when the Magi presented their offerings, and Mary received them at the very time when Joseph circumcised Christ. In truth, Joseph circumcised him according to the law, but he only went through or imitated the act of cutting, for no flesh whatsoever was cut off from him. For as a rod of iron passeth through the fire and cutteth the rays thereof, without any part of it being cut off from it, so in like manner was Christ circumcised, without anything being taken from him. The conversion of the Magi. And the Magi lived with the child 3 days, and they saw the hosts of heavens going up and coming down to Christ. And they heard the sound of the praises of the angels, who sang hymns and cried out, Holy, 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 mighty God, with those praises the heavens and the earth are filled. And they were in great fear, and in truth they believed in Christ, and said, This is the King who hath come down from heaven and become man. And Parasdah answered and said unto them, Now know I that the prophecy of Isaiah is true. For when I was in the school of the Hebrews, I read in the book of Isaiah, and I found written therein thus, For unto us a child is born, and unto us a son hath been given. And his name shall be called Wonderful, and Counselor, and God, Giant of the worlds. And it is written in another place, Behold, a virgin is with child, and she shall bring forth a son, and his name shall be called Emmanuel, which is, being interpreted, God with us. And because he became like a man, and the angels were coming down from heaven to him, truly he is the Lord of angels and men. And all the Magi believed and said, Truly this King is God. Kings are born unto us frequently, and mighty men, the sons of mighty men, are born unto us on earth. But it is an unheard of thing for the angels to come down to them. And straightway they all rose up and did homage to him as the Lord and King of the world. And having prepared food for their journey, they went down to their own country by a desert road. The massacre of the innocents. Now, there are certain men who will dispute this statement and say, Where was Christ when the children were massacred? For it is written that he was not found in the land of Judah. It was because of this massacre that he fled to Egypt, so that there might be fulfilled that which is written, From Egypt I called my son, and I know this also. When Christ entered Egypt, all the idols therein were swept from the places, and fell down and were broken, so that there might be fulfilled that which is written. Behold, the Lord rideth on a swift cloud, and entereth Egypt, and the idols of Egypt shall be broken before him. And he did not return from Egypt at once, but lived there until Herod died, and after him reigned Archelaus. Now thou must know, O brother Nemesius, that, even as I have already told thee, all the men who were under the rule of Herod were included in that registration for taxation, and the registration was completed in 50 days, and it was not until his registration was completed and sealed, and until Herod had sealed it and sent it to Augustus in Rome, that the Messiah was searched for. Up to that time no children had been slain. And it was during the commotion caused by that registration that Christ was born. When 40 days after his birth had been fulfilled, Christ went into the temple of the Lord, and Simeon the aged, the son of Joshua bar Yozadak, in whose days the captivity went up from Babel, took him in his arms. Now Simeon was 500 years old when he took Christ in his arms. The flight into Egypt. And straightway the angel said unto Joseph, Arise, take the young child and his mother, and flee into Egypt. And when the registration was completed, the Jews were dismissed, so that each man might depart to his own district and to his own village. Herod and John the Baptist. Then did Herod inquire for the Magi, and when he was told, They have gone back to their own country, he was exceedingly wroth, and he sent straightway and slew all the young children in Bethlehem, and in all the villages round about. And when Herod had passed among the slain children, and they did not find there the body of John, the son of Zacharias, he said, Truly, his son will reign over Israel, for he had heard of what had been said unto Zacharias by the angel, when he announced to him concerning the birth of John. And Herod sent to Zacharias and commanded him to bring John. And Zacharias said, I am priest, and I am minister in the temple of the Lord. I do not know where the child and his mother are. And because of these words, Zacharias was slain between the bench and the altar. Now Elizabeth had taken John and gone forth into the desert. The death of Herod. And as for Herod, a divine punishment that was pitiless overtook him, and he fell ill of a sickness through which he stank, and his body melted away into a mass of worms, and he suffered most grievous pains, and at length people were unable to come near him because of his putrid smell. And through that bitter suffering his soul departed into outer darkness. Nevertheless, by his death he destroyed many. Now Herod said unto Archelaus his son, and unto Shalom his sister, Immediately I am dead, let those whom I have fettered in prison be slain. Now he had imprisoned one person from every house. And he said, I know that the Jews will feel great joy at my death, but in order that they might not rejoice and be glad, whilst ye are sorrowful and are weeping, let all those whom I have shut up in prison be slain, so that through their death they may cause lamentation unintentionally. And Archelaus and Shalom did as Herod commanded them. And when this order had been carried out in all Judea, there remained not one house in which there was not lamentation, even as it was in Egypt. Christ returns to Galilee. And when Herod died and his death had been announced to Joseph, he went back to Galilee. And when Christ was 30 years old, he was baptized by John. Now John was in the desert all the days of his life, and he lived upon the root which is called camus, which is wild honey. And in the 12th year of the kingdom of Tiberius, Christ suffered. Chronological statement. Understand now and see, O my brother Nemesius, that in the days of Jared, in his 40th year, the first 1,000 years came to an end. In the 600th year of Noah, the second 1,000 years came to an end. In the 74th year of Ru, the third 1,000 years came to an end. In the 26th year of Ahor, or Ahud, the fourth 1,000 years came to an end. In the second year of Cyrus, the 5th 1,000 years came to an end. And in the 500th year of the 6,000th years, Christ was born in his human form. The crucifixion of Christ. And know thou also that Christ dwelt in Mary, and suffered in Nazareth, and was born in Bethlehem, and was laid in a manger, and was carried by Simeon in the temple of Solomon, and was reared in Galilee, and was anointed by Mary Magdalene, and ate the Passover in the house of Nicodemus, the brother of Joseph of Arimathea, and was bound in the house of Hannah, and was struck with a reed in the house of Caiaphas, and embraced the pillar, and was scourged with a whip in the praetorium of Pilate. And on Friday, on the first day of Nisan, which is April, on the 14th day of the moon, our Redeemer suffered. At the first hour of Friday, God fashioned Adam from the dust, and at the first hour of Friday, Christ received spittle from the sons of Adam. In the second hour of Friday, the wild beast and the cattle and the feathered fowl gathered themselves together to Adam, and he gave names to them as they bowed their heads before him. And at the second hour of Friday, the Jews gathered themselves together against Christ, and they gnashed their teeth at him, even as the blessed David said, Many bulls have gathered together round about me, bulls of Bashan have beset me round. At the third hour of Friday, a crown of glory was placed on the head of Adam, and at the third hour of Friday, the crown of thorns was placed on the head of Christ. 3 hours was Adam in paradise and shining with splendor, and 3 hours was Christ in the judgment hall, being beaten by creatures that had been fashioned out of dust. At the 6th hour, Eve went up to the tree of the transgression of the commandment, and at the 6th hour Christ ascended the cross, the tree of life. At the 6th hour, Eve gave unto Adam the fruit of the gall of death, and at the 6th hour the crowd of iniquity gave unto Christ vinegar and gall. For 3 hours Adam remained under the tree naked, and for 3 hours was Christ naked on the wood of the cross. And from the right side of Adam went forth Eve, the mother of mortal offspring, and from the right side of Christ went forth baptism, the mother of immortal offspring. On Friday Adam and Eve sinned, and on Friday their sin was remitted. On Friday Adam and Eve died, and on Friday they came alive. On Friday death reigned over them, and on Friday they were freed from his dominion. On Friday Adam and Eve went forth from paradise, and on Friday our Lord went into the grave. On Friday Adam and Eve became naked, and on Friday Christ stripped himself naked and clothed them. On Friday Satan stripped Adam and Eve naked, and on Friday Christ stripped naked Satan and all his hosts, and put them to shame openly. On Friday the door of paradise was shut, and Adam went forth, and on Friday it was opened, and a robber went in. On Friday the two-edged sword was given to the cherub, and on Friday Christ smote with the spear, and brake the two-edged sword. On Friday kingdom and priesthood and prophecy were given unto Adam, and on Friday priesthood and kingdom and prophecy were taken from the Jews. At the 9th hour Adam went down into the lowest depth of the earth from the height of paradise, and at the 9th hour Christ went down to the lowest depths of the earth, to those who lay in the dust from the height of the cross. Know also that Christ was like unto Adam in everything, even as it is written, in that very place where Melchizedek ministered as a priest, and where Abraham suffered up his son Isaac as an offering, the wood of the cross was set up, and that self same place is the center of the earth, and there the four quarters of the earth meet each other. For when God made the earth, his mighty power was running before it, and the earth was running after it, and the power of God stood still and became motionless in Golgotha, and that same place formeth the boundary of the earth. When Shem took up the body of Adam, that same place which is the door of the earth opened itself, and when Shem and Melchizedek had deposited the body of Adam in the center of the earth, the four quarters of the earth closed in about it, and embraced Adam, and straightway that opening was closed firmly, and all the children of Adam were not able to open it. And when the cross of Christ, the Redeemer of Adam and his sons, was set up upon it, the door of that place was opened in the face of Adam. And when the wood was fixed upon it, Christ was smitten with the spear, and blood and water flowed down from his side. They ran down into the mouth of Adam, and they became a baptism to him, and he was baptized. Now when the Jews crucified Christ on the cross, they divided his garments among them beneath the cross, even as it is written, his tunic was of purple, which is the raiment of royalty. And when they stripped him of the raiment of royalty, Pilate would not permit the Jews to array him in ordinary apparel, but only in the actual raiment of royalty, either purple or scarlet. By both of these it might be known that he was a king, for it is impossible for any other man to wear purple. Only a king can do this. And one of the evangelists hath said, the soldiers put on him a purple robe. And this is a true word and is highly credible. And another evangelist uses the word scarlet, and he proclaimed what was true. The scarlet garment indicateth to us blood, and the purple garment water. For the scarlet one was like unto blood, and the purple one was like unto water. The scarlet garment proclaimeth the joyful and immortal nature of man, and the purple one the sad and mortal nature of man. Understand, therefore, our brother Nemesius, the scarlet proclaimeth life. Now the spies said prophetically to Rahab the harlot, thou shalt tie a thread of scarlet to the window, when they descended, having been well entreated by her. And through her they prefigured a certain matter, for the window symbolized the side of our Lord Christ, and the thread of scarlet his precious blood, which produced life. And they wove a crown of spikes of thorn bushes, and set it upon his head, and they arrayed him in royal apparel, not knowing what they were doing. And they bowed the knee, and made obeisance unto him, and they spake with their mouths, without being compelled to do so, saying, Hail to thee, King of the Jews! Observe ye, O my brethren, that not even in his death did he lack the sign of royalty. And when the Jews and the soldiers who were the servants of Herod and Pilate were struggling together to rend the tunic of Christ, to divide it among them, they did so because they all eagerly desired the beauty of the sight thereof. And the centurion also, who watched the cross himself, testified before all the crowd, saying, Verily, this man is the Son of God. And this centurion said unto them, The orders which have been given to me do not permit me to rend the apparel of royalty, but cast lots for it, and we shall see to whom it will come. And when the Jews and the soldiers of the king had cast lots, the lot fell upon one of the soldiers of Pilate. Now the tunic of our Lord had no seam, but had been woven whole in one piece. And whensoever there was a lack of rain in the place where it had been deposited and taken care of, the people used to bring out the tunic, and as soon as they lifted it up towards heaven, an abundance of rain fell. And also, whensoever the soldier who had received it lacked rain for his crop, he brought out the tunic, and it worked this miracle. Now the tunic was taken away by force from the man who got it by Pilate, who sent it to the emperor Tiberius. To us this tunic indicateth the orthodox faith, which all the nations joined together are unable to cleave. Three valuable gifts, than which there is nothing more valuable, were given to the Jews in olden time, namely, royalty, priesthood, and prophecy. Prophecy by the hand of Moses, priesthood by the hand of Aaron, and royalty by the hand of David. These three gifts, which the generations and families of the children of Israel had enjoyed for many years, were taken from them in one day, and they were stripped of all three of them, and became aliens to them, that is to say, prophecy by the cross, priesthood by the rending of the tunic of Christ, and royalty by the crown of thorns. Moreover, that spirit of compassion which had dwelt in the temple in the Holy of Holies forsook them and departed, and the curtain or veil of the sanctuary was cleft in twain, and the Passover fled from them, for they never celebrated another Passover in it. And know, O my brethren, that when Pilate pressed them to go into the judgment hall, they said unto him, We are unable to go into the praetorium, because up to now we have not eaten the Passover. And when the sentence of death had been passed on our Lord by Pilate, the Jews made haste and went into the sanctuary, and brought out from thence the carrying poles of the ark of the covenant, and out of them they made the cross of Christ. Verily it was meet that these pieces of wood which used to carry the covenant should also carry the Lord of the covenant. The cross of Christ was formed of two pieces of wood which were of the same height and depth and length and breadth. And Paul the apostle labored exceedingly that the Gentiles might know what was the might of the cross, which embraced the height, the depth, and length, and breadth of the earth. And when they raised up Christ, the lamp of light of all the earth, and set him upon the candlestick of the cross, the light of the sun became dark, and was extinguished, and a covering of darkness was spread over the whole earth. 3 nails were driven into the body of our Redeemer, 2 through his hands, and 1 through both his feet. And there were 2 thieves with him, one on his right hand, and one on his left hand. And they handed out to him vinegar and gall in a sponge. By the vinegar which they gave unto him, it was made known concerning them that their will was changed from what it had been formerly, and that they had turned themselves from integrity to wickedness. And by the gall was made known the bitterness of the accursed serpent which was in them. And they showed that they also had belonged to that good vineyard from which prophets and kings and priests and they themselves had drunk, but because they had become wicked heirs, who would not labor in the vineyard of my beloved, they produced husks instead of grapes, and the wine which they pressed out therein was sour. And having crucified the heir on the wood, they mixed some of the impurity of their wickedness with their sour wine, and gave him to drink of the wine from the vineyard of the Gentiles. But he would not drink, saying, Give me of that wine which my father brought out of Egypt. For Christ knew that the prophecy of Moses which had been prophesied concerning them had been fulfilled in them. For Moses said, Your grapes are grapes of gall, your clusters are bitter. Your poison is the poison of the serpent, and their head is that of a malignant viper. These are the things which ye rendered unto the Lord. Observe, O my brother Nemesius, that the blessed Moses with the eye of the Spirit foresaw the things which they were going to do to Christ, and said, These are the things which ye rendered to the Lord. The congregation of the crucifiers was a decayed vine, its daughters were bitter grapes, and its sons were clusters of gall. Their head was Caiaphas, the malignant viper, and they were all evil serpents, and all of them were filled with them, the venom of Satan, who is the evil serpent. Instead of the water of the rock which had been given them to drink in the wilderness, they gave him vinegar to drink, and instead of manna, the gall of the quail. They did not give him a cup to drink from, but a sponge, so that they might show that the blessing of their fathers had been swept away from them. Now this is the evident from what follows. When a vessel is empty and there is no wine in it, they wash and wipe it with a sponge. Even so did the Jews do when they crucified Christ, for with a sponge they wiped away and removed from themselves royalty and priesthood and prophecy and the religion of Christ, and gave them to Christ, and the vessels of their bodies washed and empty remained only. And the law and the prophets having been fulfilled, and Adam having having been sent and seen the fountain of living water, which was poured out from above for his redemption. Then was Christ smitten with the spear, and blood and water flowed down from his side, but they were not mingled with each other. For what reason did the blood come forth before the water? For two reasons. First, that through the blood life might be given unto Adam, and then, after life and resurrection, the water for his baptism. Secondly, that through the blood he might show that he was immortal, and through the water he might show that he was mortal and a bearer of sufferings. The blood and the water ran down into the mouth of Adam, and Adam was redeemed and put on a garment of glory. And Christ wrote the edict of his return with the blood of his own person, and dispatched it by the thief. And when an end had been made of everything, the writ of repudiation of the congregation was written, and the congregation became a thing cast aside, and it was stripped of its glorious raiment, even as in times of old David had, through the Holy Spirit, said and prophesied, saying, even unto the horns of the altar, to this pass were the festivals of the Jews brought. Unto the horns of the altar, the crucifixion of Christ, that is to say, the genealogy of Christ. The end of the 62 weeks. Observe, O our brother Nemesius, how the generations and families have succeeded each other, from Adam to the Jews, and the Jews also from one generation to another, until the cross of Christ. From that time and onwards the festivals of the Jews have ceased, even as the blessed David saith concerning them, bind our festivals with chains even to the horns of the altar. The chains are the families which are linked each to the other, and the altar is the cross of Christ. The festivals of the Jews succeeded each other until the cross of Christ, in priesthood, and royalty, and prophecy, and Passover. But from the cross of Christ up to the present they all have ceased, even as I have said. The Jews have no longer among them a king or a priest or a prophet or a Passover, even as Daniel prophesied concerning them, saying, after 62 weeks Christ shall be slain, and the city of holiness shall be laid waste until the completion of things decreed, that is to say, forever and ever. Christ's body is embalmed and laid in the tomb made for Joshua, the son of Nun. And when the end of all the law and the prophets had come, and Christ was hanging on the cross, Joseph, the brother of Nicodemus, and Cleophas, went into Pilate. Now he was the bearer of the seal ring of Pilate, and was counselor, and had free intercourse with him, and asked for the body of our Redeemer, and Pilate commanded that it should be given to him. And when Joseph had taken his body, straightway Pilate commanded that the garden also in which the grave was situated should be given to him. It belonged to Joseph, and it had been given unto him as an inheritance by Phinehas the Levite, the son of Joseph's uncle. Now Joseph was from Jerusalem, but he had been made a counselor in Ramtha, and all the letters which had been written during the whole period of Pilate's administration had been sealed with the seal which Joseph carried. And when Joseph had taken down the body of our Lord from the cross, the Jews ran and took the cross and brought it into the temple, because the pieces of wood thereof were the bearing poles of the ark of the covenant. And Nicodemus also embalmed the body of our Lord, and swathed it clean, new linen swathings, and Joseph made it ready for the grave, and buried it in a new tomb which had been made for Joshua the son of Nun to be buried in. And because he saw with the eye of the Spirit, and the way of the dispensation of Christ had appeared to him, he took the stone which had travelled about with the children of Israel in the desert, and placed it at the door of the tomb, and therefore he was not buried in it. And when Joseph and Nicodemus and Cleophas had buried Christ, they laid that stone before the door of the building of the tomb. And the high priests and men of the house of Pilate went out and set seals on the grave and on the stone. The cross of Christ. And now, my brother Nemesius, be amazed and give praise to God that all the straps of Christ were joined together on the bearing poles of the ark of the service of God and the covering of the sanctuary of propitiation. This was what God commanded Moses, to make a breastplate of judgment and of peace, of judgment for the Jews who crucified him, and of peace for the Gentiles who have believed in him. His cross was made of the wood of the sanctuary. His grave was a new one, which had been made for the death of Joshua, the son of Nun, and the stone, which is Christ, had when in the desert given water to 600,000 people, and now it became an altar and gave life to all the Gentiles. And the saying of the apostle, that rock was Christ, is true and well worthy of belief. Joseph was a counselor in Ramtha, Nicodemus was a teacher of the law in Jerusalem, and Cleophas was the recorder of the Hebrews in Emmaus. Nicodemus prepared everything which was required for the Passover in the upper chamber, and Joseph made him ready for burial, and buried him in his own inheritance. And Cleophas received him into his house, and when he had risen from the dead, these men became to him true and faithful brethren. The trilingual inscription above the cross. And when Joseph brought him down from the cross, he took away that inscription which was spread out above his head, that is to say, over the head of the cross of Christ, because it had been written by Pilate in Greek and Latin and Hebrew. And why did Pilate write in it no word of the Syrians? Because the Syrians participated in no way whatsoever in the shedding of the blood of Christ. And Pilate, a wise man and a lover of the truth, did not wish to write a lie as wicked judges do, but he did according to what is written in the law of Moses. Pilate wrote in the inscription the names of the languages of those who condemned the innocent in the order in which the slayers of Christ laid their hands upon him, and he hung the writing above him. Herod was a Greek, Caiaphas was a Hebrew, and Pilate a Roman. Now the Syrians had no part in the murder of Christ, and to this testifieth Abgar, king of Edessa, who wished to take Jerusalem and destroy it because the Jews crucified Christ. The harrowing of hell. Now the descent of Sheol was not in vain, for it was the cause of manifold benefits to our race. He dismissed death from his domination. He preached the resurrection to those who were lying in the dust, and he pardoned those who had sinned against the law. He laid waste to Sheol and slew sin. He put Satan to shame and made the devil sad, and he abrogated sacrifices and offerings and made an apology for Adam, and abolished the festivals of the Jews, and destroyed the doorposts and frames. He overthrew the blazing furnaces of brass and extinguished their fires, and sweeping everything out of hell, he left it like a desert. He fettered the shameless one and bound the ministers of Satan, and tied up a devil called Melchior with a chain. The resurrection of Christ. And having risen from the grave on the third day, Christ appeared to Peter and John. And whilst Christ was in the grave, and the watchmen were sitting round about it, Simon Peter conceived the design of giving the watchmen wine to drink, so that they might become drunk and fall asleep, when he intended to rise up and open the tomb, and take out the body of Christ without breaking the seals on the tomb, so that the Jews might not say, "Assuredly his disciples stole him anyway." And whilst the watchmen were eating and drinking, Christ rose up and showed himself to Peter, for he had indeed risen. And Peter believed that he was truly Christ, and Lord of the heavens and the earth, and did not approach the tomb. And afterwards Christ also appeared to the watchmen openly, and he went to his disciples in the upper chamber, and Thomas felt him. And he appeared to his disciples on the seashore. Now, though Simon Peter denied him thrice before the Jews, he acknowledged him thrice before the disciples. And Christ delivered to him and committed to his hands all his flock, saying before his disciples, "Feed thou for me my sheep and lambs and ewes," that is to say, men, women, and children. And 40 days after his resurrection, he bestowed upon the apostles the laying on of hands of the priesthood, and he went up to heaven and sat down on the right hand of his Father. Then the apostles gathered themselves together and went up into the upper chamber with Mary, the Holy Virgin, and Simon Peter baptized Mary, and John, the Virgin, received her into his house. And they decreed a fast until they had received the Spirit, the Paractely, and Pentecost, they all being gathered together, and tongues were distributed amongst them, so that each of them might go and teach that nation in the tongue which he had received, so that there might never be strife among them. And here endeth the book of the order of the succession of families from Adam to Christ, which is called the Cave of Treasures. And to God be the glory forever.